agents and sports people.
Well, look, that's true, except for vast amounts of money. Like the Dele Alli deal, Sky are reporting that it's 40 million. Others are reporting that it's free and it's 10 million when he plays 20 games. The structure of this deal is relatively unique, but the add-ons could hit as much as 40. Does he have to win a World Cup? Does he have to be European Footballer of the Year? Does he have to win the Ballon d'Or? How does this happen? How do they get to 40 million? Because if Daniel Levy is getting 40 million at any point for Dele Alli, good man. I would say also that Dele Alli is a busted flush at this point, and that Everton pinning their hopes on signing him is remarkable. It is in the same long line of horrific transfer deals that they have made, of salaries that they have picked up. Once you heard that it was a permanent deal, you're like, even if it's free, they're paying him good wages, and they've signed him on a 2.5-year deal. So he's going to get paid for the next 2.5 years. We know that Everton have vastly overpaid players in that squad, that their wage bill is one of the top 6-7 wage bills in the Premier League. And they've just added to that with a player who has been completely ineffective for 2 seasons. And they've added in Donny van de Beek, who last played football 2 years ago. Interesting when that's who you're hitching your wagon to when it comes to trying to avoid relegation.
You could make a good FIFA team out of the players that Everton now have, but whether or not it's going to actually work in the real world is a huge...
FIFA 2018.
Yeah, well, that would ideally be the game that you pick up to do this with. Like, you would say that on paper there is a world in which if you get a tune out of Ali and Van de Beek, you have a very good team, but that if is a massive if on both of those fronts, particularly with Dele Alli. You'd have a little bit of hope for Van de Beek to come through, and there's a sense that maybe he wasn't treated overly fairly at Manchester United or given a fair crack at the whip. But then again, 2 different managers have seen
Manchester
not
United
enough.
Absolutely desperate, crying out for midfielders.
Yeah.
Desperate for somebody to be a success, desperate to show that they know what they're doing in the transfer window, and they never gave him a game, really.
Did he play 50 times? Was that the
50 appearances?
50 appearances, yeah. So they got he was in and around quite a bit. But still this kind of sense that maybe it was just the wrong move for him and the wrong club for Van de Beek. Basically, I'm just making the point that if you're going to pine your hopes on one of those 2 players, you're going to pick Van de Beek rather than Dele Alli. That doesn't exactly say much.
Adding both at the same time, what does this do for...
As well as Frank Lampard, let's not forget, who is also as untrusted as the 2 players. Probably, of the 3 of them, the one who'd be least concerned about, which, again... not saying very much about where Everton are at the moment. Yeah,
the point about 2 managers at Man United, the same holds for Dele Alli as well. We've had Mourinho, we've had Nuno, we've had Conte. None of them wanted him. They all gave him a chance. And before that, I can't even remember.
Pochettino.
It goes so fast. Pochettino at the end wasn't playing him, was he? Was he? John will be in a little bit later on. He can tell us the chapter and verse on Dele, because it seems that it had kind of disappeared for him under the last season under Pochettino, had it?
Well, it was definitely... Well, Pochettino's last full season was getting to the Champions League final.
But was Dele Alli playing well that season, or had he disappeared from the team?
He was definitely a part of them getting to the Champions League final, and there was definitely a sense that he was going well. I thought that he had started to show a glimpse of his resurgence at the start of Jose Mourinho. We all know that just dissipated very, very quickly. And Mourinho, in fairness to him, and we saw from the Amazon documentary, tried to work his magic on him, but it just felt that Mourinho didn't have much magic left himself, and also Ali
that game,
didn't really uphold his end of the bargain. So Pochettino goes by November, December that season, so it's the start of the 2019-20 season where we start to see the demise of Dele Alli, and that is 2 seasons ago at this point. It's a borderline nostalgia signing, isn't it?
I think so. I think that it's big risk. Now, if Frank Lampard can turn Dele Alli into a useful resource, and it costs them 40 million because they're happy to spend 40 million over the next 2 seasons to sign him, then fair play. But it's a big risk considering they are in a relegation battle. Donny van de Beek in his interview was saying, my first aim here is to try and fight to keep the team up. Nobody really expected Everton to be fighting relegation at the start of the season, particularly when they won their first couple of games. So I don't know. That part of it was, I thought, curious enough. I do think that the Lingard situation at Manchester United speaks volumes about how badly run the club is. Here's a player they want to get rid of and can't get rid of. Here's a player who wants to leave the club and can't leave. Here's a player who, at the end of last season, they wanted to get rid of and couldn't get rid of, even though they had an opportunity to do it. It doesn't make any sense to have a player who does not want to be there. So maybe the fact that they won't have Mason Greenwood for the rest of the season speaks to some reason why they want to keep an extra body around. Perhaps that feeds into Manchester United's thinking on that. Newcastle obviously wanted to get him and Lingard and were rebuffed again at the last minute when there was another transfer. Somebody turned down the opportunity to get on the plane. They lit on for him. Not a good sign. But I think Newcastle have had a reasonable transfer window. I think their transfer window is good enough for them to stay up. They've recast their defence. They have 3 new defenders, and who are fine, who are Premier League standard. Not like so Trippier obviously is the standout. They've got a reasonable centre back and a reasonable left back, and there'll be strength and depth there. And it looks like Kieran Clark, did he get a move in the end? I don't know. But they were saying that if he doesn't get a move, he won't be registered to play for them for the rest of the season. So we'll see exactly when the paperwork is put in what happens with that. But they didn't go crazy. They didn't sign a bunch of players who they're going to be stuck with into the long term for mad money that won't have any resale value. They didn't sign Danny Ings for 40 million.
They signed Chris Wood for
12.
I think Chris Wood was a lot more than that, was it?
Was he not maximum 20? But Chris Wood is a player who I think that they can, if they're in the championship next season, Chris Wood will score 18 to 22 goals, right?
Yeah.
So that's a totally fine signing. And they got enough in. They got enough good quality bodies in. And the midfielder, I don't know enough about him. I have not seen him play enough. I haven't read the scouting reports in the detail that you'd need to see. Is he a plug and play and therefore immediately the midfield becomes better? I mean, certainly the reputation is very high and the expectation is big around him. So
yeah, 24 years of age. I suppose that's half the reason why he commands such a fee. Like that's the exciting. That's almost the signing you can point to and say, well, that makes sense. And even Matt Targett, who's still only 26 years of age, is a signing that.
But not buying Matt Targett, right?
Yeah,
that's not great business from Villa's perspective. They're desperate. They need a left back. Give us 20 million from him. I mean, why not? Give us the 20 million. You've got all the money. And they didn't do it.
Yeah.
They were like, no, we're taking him on loan.
Yeah, and then obviously there'll be 6 months less on his contract when they go to renegotiate if things work out in the summertime, and that's like
if they stay up, they're not signing Matt Targett.
Well,
if they stay up, they're signing like somebody who's world class, and suddenly there was an interesting piece. Jose Enrique, the ex Liverpool defender, gave an interview to somebody during the week. I can't even remember who it was now. Apologies about that. But he said that if Newcastle stay up, I expect, and Coutinho has a great season, I expect Coutinho to join Newcastle because that's what's going to happen. And there's nothing Villa can do to stop it. I mean, there might be because they might have a contract in place. But
might have Steven Gerrard, you might.
Well, I think Jose Enrique's point was, in the summertime when Newcastle do their business, they're going to be doing business at such a high level because they're going to spend all the money they have, and the 90 million that they spent now, how much did we say in financial fair play? They could have gone to 120, 140. It was more than that anyway, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think so.
They had wiggle room. And look, we all know that the sponsorship deals that they're about to sign with Saudi-backed companies will mean that they're going to be able to wriggle around the financial fair play rules in exactly the same way that Manchester City have done. So all they've got to do is get to the summer. Matt Targett's gone back to Villa.
Yeah, it's not exactly the most glamorous signing if you are one of those, but I do think that there is still a little bit of a sense of throwing a lot of money at a problem here. You seem to be looking at this in a very positive way. As if you sound impressed by Newcastle.
Well, not impressed, but I think that they didn't get fleeced in a way that it was fairly obvious. There's no Robinho in the middle of that list of players. There's no when Man City got their money under Thaksin Shinawatra, it was like even less so. With Chelsea, pre-Mourinho, there was just a bunch of signings that were big tickets, showy. There was no strategy. They've signed 3 defenders in this transfer window, a midfielder and a striker. It's not like they signed 4 strikers and they're all gonna have to play.
That's what Everton did.
Well, Everton's transfer policy seems mad.
Signed 4 strikers, but added an attacking midfielder to a team with plenty of attacking midfielders / forwards already. I think the jury is still out a little bit on the work that Newcastle did over the course of the last month, to be quite honest with you. I think that the same goes for their manager at the moment, and I think Eddie Howe is not necessarily a blue ribbon manager come the end of the season if they stay up.
Okay, I get it, but you've got to do a winners and losers. You've got to do a marks out of 10 for their transfer window right now today, without knowing what happens, right? Are you like, oh, that's a 3 out of 10, or that's a good solid 6.5?
Okay, but I will give it a good solid
Maybe
6.5.
7.
Yeah, in fairness, you're not saying that it's a 9 here, and I guess that's just the only point I'm making, is that yes, they were the big spenders.
If
but
they'd signed Lewandowski, you're like, okay, great, I get that. That's you can't fail with that. But almost anybody else who is coming to Newcastle, there's no guarantee they're going to fit straight into that team and start scoring goals.
No, absolutely not. And like I just have a tiny bit of concern over the likes of the fee paid for Chris Wood. I mean, maybe I'm wrong. I did feel like it was 20 something to 30 that they paid for a player who's 30 years of age, who Burnley went out and obviously signed someone who was taller and younger and with a better goal scoring record yesterday in Wakehurst. So maybe I'm viewing it through that prism more than the Chris Wood prism, because he's obviously done alright since he's been in the Premier League, and he's scored an okay amount of goals for Burnley. So maybe that's exactly what the sort of player they need. But maybe that's just sort of colouring my view of this a little bit. Also Trippier, I think that'll be interesting to see how that develops over the next little while. That feels very short term, but like, I mean, I like the target loan. It's not glamorous, but I like it, and Dan Byrne is a good addition there as well. Like when you throw that sort of money at the midfielder from Lyon, it's they've obviously got high hopes for him, and it's when they start to invest the money in the scouting network and the forward planning that Newcastle are going to be a very dangerous beast. There is naturally going to be a state of putting a plaster on it now, because they have to, because they're in trouble. In a way,
I kind of like. I think that the Lingard situation speaks, as I said, to a badly run club at Manchester United, but I do in some ways have a grudging respect for the fact that they were like, no, it's 20 million for him because he's going to save your season. You either want to stay in the Premier League or you don't. And in a way, Villa didn't play hardball with Target. Like, they got nothing for him. He's just gone from and he played the last game before Dean arrived, and I think he played the first game after. Did Dean go straight in the team? Was the Everton game the second game or the first game? Anyway, whatever.
He plays against Everton anyway.
Yeah, well, he gets to the team really quickly, and then that's the end of Target. Everyone's like, oh, whatever, and that's fine. But could they not have got something for him? Do you know? Man United played hardball. Everybody's like looking at the Newcastle money, going, "Give us your money. You've got loads. You've got too much. Give us your money." And fair play to Newcastle for not just giving 20 million to Lingard, but you know, if they go down, it would have been worth it.
Yeah, like, I mean, the Manchester United was said that their original plan was for Lingard to stay until the end of the season, and like, you had Manchester Evening News reporting that Manchester United sources told him that Lingard had made it clear at the start of the window he wanted to stay and believes he'll be an important player for the rest of the season.
But he doesn't. He just wants the free transfer.
Yeah, like, that's been
like, no one believes that Jesse Lingard is going to be an important player for Man United for the rest of the season, do they?
No, I find that hard to believe myself.
Then where's your evidence for that?
Yeah.
Where's your evidence for that?
Yeah, like the same Manchester Evening News piece says that this has been disputed by sources who were privy to negotiations during Newcastle's effort to sign Lingard, who insist the player informed United of his wish to leave on loan in January after discussions over a new contract ended in November. Like, so in November, once the new contract stalls, that's it, you're out. And Manchester United, as a business organisation, need to be finding the most lucrative avenue for them to make money on Jesse Lingard.
Instead, they're going to spend a couple of million between now and the end of the season on this player who they can't use. Like, and you're like, oh, it's the Man United, they can afford it, and of course they can afford it, but that's a disaffected couple of million. That's a cost centre, and sitting alongside him are a bunch of other players who are not playing, who are on a couple of million between now and the end of the season, and suddenly that's 20 million, and they're opportunity stoppers for young players coming through, and they're also opportunity stoppers for you to get new players in, because it's just so badly run with no strategy and no sense of what's coming next. And this was a transfer window where you were like, okay, there's a good chance that they might be able to. So Rangnick is supposed to be there to inject a long-term plan or a vision into the club, right? And that's what was supposed to happen with the two directors of football who have very similar titles, and it's hard to know what the difference between them is. Technical director, what's the other one? Head of technical assistant to the junior vice president.
That's exactly it.
And you think, well, why don't they start this now? Why haven't we seen a bunch of players go right now? Because I don't think they have a clue what they're doing. Because
Rangnick doesn't know what his job is going to be at the end of the season.
Well, and they're instead of suspended animation until is it going to be Pochettino? Maybe he wants some of these players. Is it going to be Ten Hag? Maybe he wants some of these players.
And what if Rangnick what if we have a verdict on Rangnick at the end of the season that he's not a good football manager? Does that affect his capability as an advisor to the football club?
I mean, probably not, because they are actually different jobs, aren't they?
They were completely different jobs. But
being able to buy and negotiate and set contracts and set a wage structure is actually a different job from being on the training pitch and going, this week what I need you guys to do is this, because this team offers these threats to you.
But would you be surprised if he was jettisoned as a result of a poor managerial record?
Well, it would be in exact keeping with how the club is run. Not quite sure what we're trying to do, making so much money that it doesn't really matter. It's a boom time for the owners, and it's probably been a boom time for the senior employees. Like, Solskjaer obviously made a lot of money. I think all the managers probably got relatively well remunerated for being in charge of one of the biggest football clubs in the world without ever delivering any specific success. So, the Alli deal was Everton's best in a long time, says Bido. It doesn't make much sense getting both himself and Van de Beek, though. Look, I guess from Everton's perspective, they're looking at it, it's relatively low risk. You take on his big wage packet and you don't pay anything until he plays 20 games. And so if he hasn't, so he can't do that this season because there isn't enough league games left. So you get this season to decide whether or not you're going to spend the transfer money, but then you've got to pay his wages for the next 2 years, which isn't nothing either. And again, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? Are you going to have somebody who can't play for the team because it triggers all these clauses? If you spool forward and Dele Alli hasn't made the desired impact on the team and Frank Lampard hasn't got a tune out of him and he's played 18 games, what are they going to do? Pick him in no-mark League Cup games and pay 20 million for that? Or 12 million or 10 million or 40 million, depending on what it is? Are they?
Like, everyone would say that they've got a pretty easy decision to make in that instance, where they'll just...
Well, what do? They sit him on the bench for 2 seasons.
Well,
they Winston Bogart the situation.
It's going to be... You'd like to think that at the end of the season they can make a pretty informed decision on that.
Yeah, but say the decision is he's not going to be good enough.
Yeah, then
you're on the hook for 2 years of contract.
Yeah. And it's just, you're just getting out of the massive transfer fee is the kind of one-dimensional way that they're looking at this.
Let's say he's on he's signing a deal at Everton where everybody knows that the contracts are between 100 and 200 grand a week. So it's between 5 and 10 million a year. So that's already 10 million in that two and a half year deal minimum. So the transfer deal cost us, and it's just somebody else who's like, he's not playing. Here's a long list of players who are in a separate room away from the first team who are sucking the money out of the club. Or maybe he's a massive success and it's all fine. There's a range of outcomes there, but there's been no evidence that he's been able to recover the form that made him a devastating forward. Maybe him and Calvert-Lewin can be a brilliant, and they can sell Richarlison and he can be the replacement for Richarlison. It looks like great business.
God, I'm not sure if that's great business at all. I think if you're picking Richarlison or Dele Alli in your team right now, even though Richarlison hasn't exactly been shooting the lights out, you're picking Richarlison every day of the week.
Yeah, but sorry, this is the dream scenario for Frank Lampard.
For Ali to become better than Richarlison.
Yeah, or a replacement for him. Right, give us your views. 0879 180 180 is the WhatsApp number. Connor P. McKeown wants to know: is it too soon for power rankings? It is not. It is never too soon after a weekend as seismic as last weekend. We are massively overreacting, as you should do, to the opening round of the league. Power rankings coming your way at 8:10. The rugby depth chart, we're going to do the back three with Luke Fitzgerald in about 2 minutes' time. Niamh Rockett is going to tell us her remarkable individual story. She's an all-star Camogie player at 8:30. Sports pages and John Duggan's reaction and his lap of honour to celebrate an incredible tipping feat at the weekend of virtual insanity. Catherine Murphy's going to join us live from Melbourne, where the Australians are celebrating Ash Barty and the Special K doubles who won Ger Eoin and his buddy who starts with K.
Kokonakis.
Say it again.
Kokonakis.
There you go. Deal or No Deal at 9:15 and Billy Joe Padden at 9:30. If you want to get in touch, we'd love to hear from you. You can also leave a comment on the YouTube stream. Right. We've been doing our depth charts. We've got the last one to come. It is the back three, and I'm delighted to say Luke Fitzgerald is with us this morning. Luke, good morning to you. How are you?
Morning, lads. How are things?
So your depth chart's really interesting because I think you've gone for who you would pick, right? And am I right in saying James Lowe is top of your depth chart after his heroics in the November internationals?
Yeah, he is for that 11 slot. I thought he showed a lot of improvement. I think defensively is probably the area that most people were concerned about, and I thought he showed some improvement there. My worry with him is that he thinks that that's finished. Probably that interview after the New Zealand game maybe leads me to that conclusion, but we wait and see. I hope he doesn't think he's the finished article there, because I think in attack, he's just so strong. He provides something different, brilliant athlete, great footwork, but I thought the ball handling ability that he has probably differentiates him a little bit, and I think that's probably why he's top of that chart in the 11th slot. I think his ability to link up play behind either forwards or one of your centres really releases the likes of your Keenans, your Conways, these guys. So that's why he's there. I think he's playing really great rugby, and I hope to see him back fit pretty soon, because I think he's become an important player for Ireland.
Yeah, I haven't heard a prognosis on when he might be back. It was just kind of news that he was out, because Leinster basically hadn't played rugby in, it seems like, 15 years. We didn't know that he was out long term, then he wasn't in the squad at all. So he won't be there. You've got Keith Earls next on the 11 list, and then Simon Zebo in third for number 11. Talk to us about your pecking order here. Why is Earls ahead of Zebo, and do you expect then Earls to start against Wales?
I do, yeah. Look, I just like Keith Earls as a player. I think his defensive play has really come on. He's very strong there. I think he's an arch finisher. Like, his try record for Ireland is brilliant. Zebo is, of course, as well, but I just like Keith Earls in there. I think he's playing well for a long time. He's obviously very experienced. And I just think he gives you that little bit of X factor in if you can get him into open space. So that's why I have him there. It's a pretty tight call. I mean, Zebo's been injured as well for a little bit, and probably that's why he sits just behind Keith Earls for me. I always think it takes him a little bit longer to get back in gear after injuries. I don't think he's an unbelievable trainer. I think he's probably coming into a part of his career where that might end up hurting him. We wait and see. I hope I'm wrong on that, because he's a player that I really admire and like. He is very much in that James Lowe build. And there's probably a fairly frequent theme when we go through this depth chart. I think Zebo's ball handling ability is something that I think it's probably a little bit underutilised at Munster at the moment, but he's well, I'm not going to get onto my 15 depth chart just yet, but he just missed out there, because I just think that's a bit of an X factor thing for him. I know he gets a lot of tries and he's got a lovely left boot, but the ball handling ability for me, I just think the way Ireland are playing at the moment, since the November internationals, that little bit more expansive game plan. You need players like this, because I don't think Ireland have unbelievable playmakers outside Johnny Sexton and whoever plays at 9 for us. So your 15s and your wingers become really, really important to you. And that's probably why Zebo's in there, having not played too much, but I think he's just behind Keith Earls for me, and that might just be a preference thing for me.
It felt, maybe this was 2019 when Henshaw played at 15, that there was a real sort of consensus that allowing Simon Zebo to go to France was just a bad move for Ireland, or there was talk once again for the millionth time about the rules and maybe making an exception for Zebo like they made an exception for Sexton. That felt in the context of 15, Luke, if I'm not misremembering. So why have things changed since his return to Munster, that it's pretty certain that if he's going to play, it's going to be on the wing as opposed to being back up to Hugo Keenan?
Yeah, well, look, I think we brought it naturally brings us on to that 15 slot, doesn't it? I think Keenan has really shone over the last year or two. He's become a key player for Leinster, but also a key player for Ireland. And I just like he's not the first name down on the team sheet, but he's pretty close at this stage. The fitness levels, I think, from his sevens days, he just looks so game for the fight all the way through. Again, he's got great ball handling ability. I think that plays nicely to this Irish team where there's lots of good athletes. And I think, we just don't have those big, heavy guys. So we have to play that kind of game we played in November. And Keenan suits that perfectly. He's a defensive, he's solid at the back in terms of the defensive side of things. He's good in the air. And he's got a nice kicking game too. I think he's really rounded himself out nicely, and he's become a really key player in both teams. Zebo very good at all those things. I think when you look back at that move, I think there was a clash with Joe Schmidt there. I probably touched on the training aspect with Zebo. That probably wouldn't have sat well with Joe, who was all about training as you play. Zebo's very much he's a pretty relaxed guy in lots of respects. Brilliant rugby player, and a flair player. And I think at times he felt like if probably Joe wound him up a little bit too tight, and that's probably not how he likes to feel going out in the pitch, because he likes to express himself out there. And I think that move probably suited everyone. Zebo got paid well, and he was probably not going to be. It was probably hard for Joe to select him because he's just a different character than Joe would probably generally, I think, lean towards. So Keenan's there ahead of Zebo, and I think Zebo probably just hasn't shown enough in the Munster jersey yet to be in that 15 conversation. So that's why he's on top of the pops there and doesn't show in my 15 depth chart yet.
Is it just the case as well that maybe Haley is a little bit underrated in the national conversation, and that's why Zebo is just playing more on the wing for Munster? I guess what I'm trying to ask is there a reason why we've seen just more of him on the wing, even for club, Luke, over the last little while?
Yeah, maybe a little bit of both. I'm never really convinced by Haley. I actually think he looked pretty good the last couple of times I've watched him. Looks pretty strong with the ball. But I don't really feel like he's got anything outstanding about his game. I love Zebo at 15. It's my favourite position for him. As I said, I love the ball handling ability, but he's got that left boot as well. He's pretty cultured there with that. It's a lovely weapon for him, and he uses it well. I like that he can pop up with a bit of a free role at fullback. And I actually think he's not a big hitter in defence, but he reads the game well there, and he's actually a very good defender. He rarely gets himself in too much trouble without being a big hitter or anything like that. He's very good there, underrated part of his game. And also he's brilliant in the air. So I would probably, if I was playing, if I was the Munster coach, I'd be selecting him at 15. But it looks like whether it's because they like Haley, or because they think that Zebo's just better on the wing, or maybe he needs to play himself into a bit more form, or show them something else there. I don't know why, but he would have been the obvious selection for me at fullback, and that's where I would have slotted him in the Munster team, because I think it gives them that little bit of extra. Again, that little bit of expansiveness that probably they have been lacking. We've been criticising them for a while. I don't know if you guys have, but we have. I think we saw a little bit, probably a few green shoots there at the end of the pool stage. But I think Zebo would have given them that straight away, and I thought that would have been a lovely slot for him to come back into. But look, we wait and see on that. Maybe a few more games, a bit more game time there. He slots into that 15 role, but they like Haley at the moment.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see if everybody was fully fit. If it is Conway and Earls and Zebo in the back three in whatever constellation, and they could even interchange during the match if they need to. Van Grant did drop Zebo for a European Cup semi-final. I think maybe we underrate that aspect of this whole conversation. I think it was already clear that he was leaving, but he didn't pick him. He picked Dan Wootton ahead of him, didn't he, in the away semi-final? The year that he was leaving. So I'm sure the Schmidt thing was the main driver, but definitely if you're not feeling the love from your head coach as well, and I don't know, maybe next season will be the year that we see the full flowering of whatever is to come at Munster. So that's interesting. Look, so let's go back to the fullback depth chart. You've got Keenan first. After that you've got Michael Lowry and Jordan Larmour. We were talking with Ron McGarrett during the week, and he was talking about finishers and how actually over the course of 83, 84, 90 minutes, or however long a game actually lasts these days, that in that final 10, 15 minutes you need players who are going to be able to have an impact. Larry was the one who came to mind for me immediately, like the footwork and the speed. So what's your instincts about where Larry can go? What's his ceiling in an Ireland shirt?
I'd say my instincts are the same as yours, Ger. I think he's really impressed me in that Ulster jersey. I know he can play a little bit of 10 as well. Again, that recurring theme of ball handling ability. I just think it's so important for this Irish team now, if they're going to be playing that faster brand. That footwork. And again, some of the smaller guys, Larmour as well, I'd probably include in this. They can kind of be a nightmare to deal with. I know myself, having played against a few of these guys, that, your Shane Williams, sometimes they're the most difficult players on the pitch to mark. And again, the longer you get into the game, some of those smaller people probably come into the game a little bit more there because they're just not carrying as much weight, and I think, their fitness levels are generally high, and that's when they can really hurt you because they're hard to get your hands on them. So that's why I like Larry in there. I think he's played brilliantly for Ulster. And I think, look, Larmour is behind him at the moment in that 15 depth chart in my mind. But that's just a virtue of probably Larry playing at 15 all the time as well. I do think Jordan Larmour's, an excellent fullback there. Just been ousted by Hugo Keenan, who's been playing brilliantly. So that's why Larry's there, and that's probably why Larmour's there too. I just think they're difficult to contain. If teams are tired, you've been scrummaging, you've been mauling for 80, whatever long you were saying, 83, 84 minutes, whatever it is. The last thing you want to see is someone like Larmour or Larry popping up around the pitch, in your channel. It'd be a nightmare to try and contain. So that's why those two guys are there. Very, very attack minded. I think they do, they are smaller guys. You think they might be there to be attacked in the air, possibly, but I think they've both actually held their own in that respect. And from an attacking perspective, difficult to contain. I probably picked these two guys based on my own feelings around marking people like this. Very, very difficult to defend against. So that's why they're there, I think, guys.
Yeah, and it does feel like this coaching ticket will be happy to have a player like that in the backfield, knowing that there might be a bit of a trade-off in terms of defence, but your attack is going to be more important over the course of the full game, and so therefore we're willing to take that risk. Whereas in the Joe Schmidt era, I'm not sure any of those lads would have been given the head at fullback in particular. So let's try and look at the right wing here, because I think we can have the conversation really about the match day 23 as well with this one. So on the right wing, who have you gone for?
I gone for Conway first. I just really like Conway. I think he's probably a bit of the Lee Halfpenny mould about him in the air. Like, he's quite a small guy, but he really is so good there. Very committed, excellent technique. I think the high ball has gotten a lot of grief, particularly that box kick. But it's still such an important part of the game. Conway's brilliant at that. He's also an excellent finisher, and I think he's in great form. He probably could have slotted somewhere into that depth chart at 11, but I just like him on the right wing because I think he's playing there more regularly. He's got a nice right-footed kicking game, which I think he's improved massively. So yeah, that's why Conway's at the top of the chart there, followed very closely by Larmour and Balakoon. Now, I was really torn about who I was going to have in this second slot. It's probably the position I picked, or I spent the most time kind of selecting, is this second slot behind Conway. Balakoon has been brilliant. He's a big guy. He's got that real top end pace. He's played well for Ulster. He looks strong. He's put on a little bit of strength as well into his game, just by virtue of probably time training. He's been brilliant for Ulster. He just misses out to Larmour for me because I probably based this on experience in an Irish jersey, and that was it, because I think this is a really tight call at the moment, because I think Larmour's played himself back into my mind in terms of his last couple of weeks. Obviously didn't, had a tricky little period there where he lost a little bit of form, but I think he looks like he's back to his old self. I mean, against Bath, some of the lines that he cut, he just looks so dangerous, and if you get him on open field, same as Larry, smaller guys, but the footwork and the pace, they're just a nightmare to try and contain. So just beats out Balakoon there, and I think probably, again, that was the late push in terms of the form, but also experience in the Irish jersey, and that probably rounds out my depth chart in those three positions, lads.
And look, the depth chart's obviously a very blunt instrument. You pick the individual positions in and of themselves, but for a match day 23, the flexibility of the individuals that we're talking about here, Earls can obviously, at a push, if he's required, play in the centre. Larry, as you mentioned, has a bit of 10 about him. So what would you pick if you had to pick the match day 23? Let's assume that your first three, so it's Keenan, Conway, and who was your left wing? Who was your 11? Sorry,
Keenan, Conway, Earls, right?
Oh, it was James Lowe.
So right. Lowe's not fit, so Earls right. Goes in, right? Who's on the bench?
Yeah, I think probably Lowry comes in, or it's probably Carberry's another guy. Like the complexion of the bench, I hadn't actually anticipated you go in this direction with it, to be honest with you. But the bench is a tricky one for me, because I think Carberry covers loads of positions for me. I think his best position is fullback still, but I think they're going to pick him on the bench. You could have Lowry in there because he could fill into that slot at 10 if you were really, really stuck. I don't think you'd ever put him there, but just if you were really stuck. Larmour as well has played a little bit in the centre. He can play all across the back three. I don't really think it matters where you pick him there as well. Look, if Earls is there, you could probably pick an out-and-out back three player, because again, as you said, you could slot him in at the centre. So Earls probably gives it all the options if he's on the pitch or on the bench, which I think he will be. So
okay.
I think you can probably pick. Sorry, yeah, go on.
No, I'm interested because that's Balakoon. Balakoon can't get picked anywhere except the wing, but actually you can put him on the bench if Earl starts, because if there's a centre injury, you can move Earls into the centre. And I suppose that's where that flexibility comes.
Yeah, Earls is your Swiss Army knife, isn't he? And I think everyone, it allows you to select a purist, if you like, on the bench. Yeah, so it is great to have players like that. I probably have Lowry and probably Carberry in that mould to a certain extent as well. Just great rugby players can slot them in everywhere.
What's the difference, Luke, between the left wing spot and the right wing spot, really?
Probably less and less as time has gone on. I think there was a big component of it was probably based on your 9 and what foot he was kicking with back in the day. But other than that, really, I think there's very little in it. I think oftentimes you've less security at probably on the left wing, particularly from scrum time, because you often lose your 9. But other than that, the rest of the play is very kind of similar these days. I really, there isn't much of a difference. I think what is very important to me the longer I've gone on is actually having your kicking foot, your main kicking foot as your outside leg. So whatever it is has to be closest to the touchline, because it just bails you out of bad situations. I've always felt that it's a mistake to pick someone on a wing that a right winger, that's a left footer. Those kind of things, they actually don't really work very well. I think that's a mistake, and that's probably the only thing that dictates who you're picking on the wings at this stage for me, because the rest of the game is very similar. It is nice to have your main stepping foot as well as your outside foot, but that's probably just a personal preference, really. I do like, I'm saying that because I don't like to have my winger going into touch ever. You never ever want your winger going to touch. You want them to be able to step back hard into the pitch and keep the ball alive for you. And that's probably why you'd have the outside kicking foot too. So that's the only thing that really probably differentiates the positions nowadays, to be honest, guys. Okay,
you could obviously also play centre as well as wing. Is that something that you think is more important and more likely as we trend forward, with maybe some obvious exceptions? Maybe Balakoon in his late 20s becomes somebody who we see as a 13 and we're all like, oh, that was obvious all along, we didn't spot it. But is it actually more important today now for your wingers to be able to slip in seamlessly into the centre, or has that era also passed a bit? What's your take on that?
I don't think there was ever an era for that, Ger. I think it's great for the team, bad for the player. I think you need, at international level particularly, you need to be able to, you have to specialise. I think you have a big problem with lots of guys who are kind of stuck for positions, and I felt that myself throughout my career. Even if you look at my selections there, like all those guys play that position all the time. They're never really switching around. I think the consistency that you have to have playing there week in, week out, that's so important when you come to the highest level. And I think you need to have kind of specialist, nearly body types too, sounds like a weird thing to say, but when you get to the international level, you need to have a certain size, pace, abilities, that kicking foot, the outside stepping foot, all those things to me are like, you need to have all those little traits to your game. Being able to do a bit of everything well is great for getting you on a bench. It's great for the team because, as you said, like your Earls and these guys, like they bail you out of, you can pick players, specialist players on the bench because of someone like him if he's there, or you can pick him on the bench and he covers everything. But for the player, I just don't think you ever really can reach the heights of being a really great international rugby player. Just my personal opinion on it. Always felt it was a mistake myself. I look at the guys like nowadays who probably fall into that bracket. Your guys like Frawley is the one that really sticks out to me. I think he looks like a brilliant rugby player, can play everywhere, but he's not going to get picked in any of the teams because he hasn't decided to specialise or hasn't pushed the coach hard enough to say, I'm a 10. I can only really play international rugby as a 10, so I need to be playing here week in, week out. So yeah, that's my view on that. And there's probably a few other examples I could give, but that's the one that comes to mind. And when I speak about my own career, it's always one of the things that I thought about myself. I probably should have specialised as a 12 very early in my career. I always thought that would have been my best position. So that's probably my views on that. I'm not sure that is a popular one, but it's definitely my one on it, you know.
What happened at that point? You were just flying on the wing, was it, Luke, that 12 never materialised?
I'd say I got caught in a Leinster team that had a brilliant backline. You know, like you weren't going to be dropping Gordon Darcy for a young pup. Like, you know, that wasn't going to be happening. Like, he was such a brilliant player. You got Brian O'Driscoll in the centre as well at 13. Like, you weren't going to be dropping him, were you? So I probably ended up somewhere. I ended up at 11 probably because I had a left foot kicking game. Dennis Hickey retired, which, you know, that was brilliant for my career. You know, it's funny, sometimes you need someone to move aside. Like, that was a brilliant timing for me. And I'd say that's probably, it suited to slot me in there. Like, there was an all-international backline in Leinster. Gervin Dempsey at fullback. Rob Carney was coming behind him when I first came in. And you know, Shane Horgan on the right wing. So, like, you know, Felipe Contepomi at 10, Johnny Sexton just behind him. So pretty stellar backline. And I'd say I just slotted into that position quite nicely because I would probably preferred a left foot step, which always kept the ball in play, had a left foot kicking game and was reasonably quick. And that's probably what got me into that slot there.
That makes sense, yeah. That was really interesting, Luke. Thanks a million. Cheers.
Thanks for having me on, guys.
No worries. For more of that analysis, you can get it on the Left Wing podcast. That's Luke Fitzgerald there giving us his thoughts this morning. OTB AM brought to you by Gillette. Good morning. Start with Gillette. Put your best face forward with their new and improved razors. John says, I hope Newcastle go down. And somebody else was asking about the power rankings. Well, stay tuned because a hurricane has ripped through the power rankings. It happened at Croke Park last Saturday evening. What impact has it had? Find out next.
OTB AM. This is OTB Sports Radio.
The Football Pod on OTB Sports. James O'Donoghue, you're very welcome along.
Thank you very much. The King is dead. Long live the King.
This fella's got to be a handful for the year. I can feel it already.
Get the hop on everyone else and hear the Football Pod first on the OTB Sports app every Tuesday.
When we beat Tyrone in 15, I thought we were on a winner. For
the latest on GAA, rugby, football and much more, download the OTB Sports app, turn on push notifications and hear it here first.
OTB AM.
With Gillette, put your best face forward with our new and improved razors.
It is the most hotly disputed slot in Irish media. It's Owen Sheehan's Power Rankings.
Some of these critics, these pundits,
I absolutely adore them lads. I have unbelievable time for them, but they're a great bunch, but it's not acceptable.
They like to play the hard man when they're on it. It's not very pleasant when you're trying to manage a team. All you're looking for is a bit of civility and a bit of decency, but they just dismiss you like you know, you have nothing to do with the bloody occasion.
We've made the mistake a few times of getting stuck in the early pages here, and I know there should be fairly significant movement in the early pages because you've completely underrated some of the very important games that have happened in Division 3 and Division 4 because you are a colonial superpower and that's where you're from. It's not your fault really, you're kind of born into it. It's like the patriarchy, you're as much a victim of it as anybody. But quickly let's go through this because I suspect page 1 is where the detail is at its most fiery today.
Yeah, let's go through from 32 to 1. There is a change at the bottom of the power rankings for the first time in 2 years. Carlow are down to bottom place and London leapfrogged them after beating them. It was their first match in 23 months. 9 debutants at the weekend. They were 10 points down at one stage in the game and they end up beating Carlow. They haven't won their opening game in the league in 11 years, and that was a game against Kilkenny in the 2011 league. It was one hell of a result for London at the weekend, so they move up to 31. Leitrim and on-mover at 30. They were a point down at half-time against Cavan. Cavan pulled away from them a little bit in the second half. Wexford down to 29. Waterford are up to 28, a good result against Tipperary at the weekend. They drew with Tip. Efi Fitzgerald is now the man in charge of Waterford. Wicklow staying put at 27, and then at Sligo you've got 26. You got Sligo coming up there, 3 spots. They were level with Wexford 4 different times in the second half, and then they ended up grinding it out in the end, so a good result for them. And then finally on the first page, Louth in at number 25. They lost to Laois by 5 points at the weekend, but not a bad display from them. Next up, number 24, Longford. They're down a place. They were beaten by Limerick by 7 points at the weekend. Fermanagh in at number 23. They were favourites for that game against Antrim at the weekend, according to the bookies, but they ended up losing by 9 points. Tipperary in at number 22. At County plummeting at the moment, I think it's fair to say.
They're lucky to be at 22?
I mean, Fermanagh and Longford also had very disappointing results. They were down. They were outside the 20 in their first power rankings of the year, and they were moved further from that.
Didn't Fermanagh have a bad result in Division 3 though? A whole division ahead of Tipperary.
I mean, you make a very valid point, but I mean, no, it's not. I'm not reading into that too much. Not enough to.
You're just throwing a blanket over 3 and 4, and that shouldn't be the case.
No. I'm just not moving Tipperary below Fermanagh at this point. That's the only decision I'm making here. Yes, both of these things can be very bad results. Tipperary should be beating Waterford if they've got any designs on getting promoted from Division 4. But at the moment, I'm not moving them below Fermanagh just yet. Tipperary had 5 debutants on the pitch at the weekend. That suggests a team in transition and not in a good transition.
Okay.
But it also potentially suggests a team that might get their act together over the next little while. Saw them play in pre-season; they weren't good at all. So I worry for Tipperary. I'm not going to try and paint a picture for them. And I think Munster football is in not a great place if you're looking at Tipperary and Cork, for example, two of the former pretenders to the crown. Laois are in a 21, up 3 spots. I mean, they look good in the O'Byrne Cup, narrow defeat to Dublin in the final of that one. They were good at the start of the second half against Louth. Like you mentioned a moment ago, that a hurricane has ripped through the power rankings. It was a strong gust, literally, at all these grounds, which has completely torn this power rankings to shreds. And I think Laois, at the start of the second half, they get the wind at the weekend against Louth, and they scored 2-3 without reply as a result of that big win. So that was essentially the winning of the game.
So you're not sure? Some of this is a little bit weather dependent.
I'm 100% sure these are set in stone, completely correct, and just prophetic power rankings, I think it's fair to say, not pathetic. Limerick, number 20, they're down 1 spot. So they're down 1 spot because of who's coming up above them, and we'll get to that in just a moment. They were a very good win against Longford at the weekend, to be fair to them. They won by 7 points. There was 2 points between them heading into injury time. They lost 3-5 from play in the first half. Limerick, I wonder who had the wind in the first half. I actually don't know, but I assume it was Limerick. Antrim are up to 19. That was an excellent win for them at the weekend, beating Fermanagh by 9 points. So
coming force, I'm telling you.
The coming force. They could go one up in Ulster as well over the coming weeks. Down into 18th spot. Maybe a little bit harsh. They were beaten by 7 points by Derry at the weekend. Derry definitely a better team than Down at the moment.
Derry, if you want a massive long odds each way punt for the All Ireland, they're still at about 100 to 1. I'm like, there's, of all the teams in Ulster last season, they're the ones who must have had the longest, most grim winter, which was also kind of inspiring in its grimness. It was like, look how close we were. We didn't even realise how close we were.
Yeah, they've had a particularly grim time because they've been going very well and there's been no back door. So they've been put into the worst province, and I think it's been Donegal in back-to-back years.
I don't think they're going to win the All-Ireland, but I think that they could do an Armagh and come through the back door this year to an All-Ireland quarter-final and beat somebody good in a quarter-final.
Yeah,
you don't want to see a Derry team who've come through the back door, won a load of games, found their style of play in an All-Ireland quarter-final this year.
No, I think if you're going to be putting money on a team, you're probably going to go for the provincial championship first, do you? But then again, Derry's first game in the Ulster Championship is probably going to be against Tyrone. So, I mean, you want to get them early, I guess. Tyrone will have a game against Fermanagh before that at the championship. So we'll get to them in a moment. Just to sum up some of the other teams there. Cavan are in at 17. Obviously, they're too good for Division 4, I think. It'll be interesting to see how this actually plays out over the next little while. Is a 4-point win against Leitrim a good result? Are Leitrim also going to be pushing for promotion? I mean, obviously, there's a very high-profile manager there. We need to see how good the football is over the next little while. So I'm uncertain still about Cavan moving them up to 17. I will admit that. I will admit a chink in the armour of these power rankings and that, but we will see over the next little while. Offaly then at 16. They're staying put, maybe a little bit lucky to be staying put. They lost to Clare by 9 points in their opening game of the 2022 league, and maybe they can jump a couple of places, because as you can see there, Cork are in at number 15
in free fall. You're loving this. No, you kind of need you want to patronise your neighbour. You want them to be reasonable, so you can go so you can enjoy the regular beatings that you hand out to them. They need to be reasonable, otherwise it just becomes like a bit of a car crash.
Like a little bit. And I mean, they will have their St. Finbarr's players back over the next little while. On the other side of the column, Luke Connolly has departed the setup. When will the promising youngsters from under 20s level over to the next couple of years become the spine of this team to become good? That is probably the big question for them. They have the man in charge who is probably best placed to be able to nurture this talent, and take them to contending for Munster once again over the next couple of years. I don't think this year is going to be that year of running to
we're years
rushing
away.
to conclusions at the moment, I think. Yeah, so Roscommon much better than them at the weekend. Westmeath, I've put them ahead of Cork this week because the reason why I didn't have them ahead of Cork was because Cork beat them in the big game last year. They faced off in what was a relegation playoff. Cork beat them by 6 points last year. So I kind of refused to put Westmeath ahead of Cork on that basis, despite the fact that Westmeath went out and beat Laois by 16 points in the championship last year. But after their contrasting results at the weekend, granted, one was in Division 3, one was in Division 2, I've decided to put Westmeath one over Cork. So
yeah, I mean, Westmeath should have beaten Kildare in the championship last year. They really should have. Like
2 points in the end or something like that. It was very tight.
It was absolute panic stations from, oh, we have a lead, let's defend the lead. Let's be very conservative was how the Kildare management approached the game. Maybe that's a pattern, I don't know. But we're glad that that's not going to be the case with the team this year. Anyway, they should have lost. Westmeath should have beaten them. And didn't Westmeath have there was some refereeing decision at the end that didn't go their way, that there was massive controversy about that because it was Westmeath, didn't get a lot of play. But actually, I'm sure Westmeath were thinking about it. Heslin kicking point after point after point at the weekend as well. I think,
Yeah, I think they could possibly even be maybe looking to Meath, the actual Meath, over the next little while. They had obviously a terrible result at the weekend. The 11-point defeat to Galway. It would have been worse if were the conditions good, potentially. I mean, obviously Galway have a hurricane at their back in the first half, and maybe that's why Meath don't actually end up getting on the scoreboard.
Meath's shots efficiency though. Tommy made a big play of that.
Apparently Andy McEntee didn't speak to the media after the game at the weekend. Obviously was pretty annoyed. He's used over 80 players now during his stint in charge. Only Colm Collins and Kieran McGeeney have had longer stints with their current gig than Andy McEntee. Pressure is on this year, no question.
Well, it is. He didn't have the full unwavering support of the county board. We saw there were shenanigans going on there, and so I hope he turns it around. Likes to play football in the right way. A good Meath is good for everybody.
Yeah, and I think that we were maybe clinging to that notion on a nostalgic level a little bit as well. A good Meath is good for everybody because realistically it was a second half performance against Dublin last year that was a comeback.
Well,
or
and also
was the game dead?
Yeah,
I mean, previous couple of years
the game was dead, but then it wasn't dead. That's how bad the Dubs were in that second half. Yeah. Again, if you were to go back and we might talk about this in a minute. Let's keep going.
I want to see more from me, to be honest with you. I think they could drop lower. Clare up to 12. Clare are the second best team in Munster now. I don't think there's much debate about that. For now, things can change. Obviously, they beat Offaly by 9 points at the weekend. It was an excellent result for them. Roscommon up one place to 11 after their win against Cork, and Derry also on the rise after their win against Down. So Derry finally into the top 10 in the power rankings at this point. This is slightly controversial and something you're probably going to be a bit annoyed about. I just couldn't find room for Kildare in the top 8.
Screw you, Owen. Screw you.
Non-mover at number 9 after their draw with Kerry.
Look at this. Right? It's like, oh, Kerry were terrible. You should see the WhatsApps. It was like, oh, Kerry. I'm like, well, hang on. What was it?
I was like, hang on. How did you get?
Were they playing on their own? Were they?
Yeah.
Were they
match.
There was like, they were literally kicking the ball into the gale force wind of the Atlantic, and for whatever reason, it was managing to go over their heads and over the bar.
Yeah. Incredible.
Okay, grand. That's fine. You continue to shit on us, Owen. That's fine. We will remember this.
So give me this. Who
we like accepted your manager who wasn't good enough for you. Now all of a sudden is good enough for you again. We let him just like rebuild his confidence at inter-county level, and then hand him back to you happy. Well, I wish you all the best with that, Owen. I wish you all the best.
So give me who is. We'll go through the top 8 and
Galway.
Then you think they should be ahead of Galway?
Yeah. Well, I'm sorry, but Galway are now back because they've got the haircuts and they're kicking points for fun on a gale force. Let's see you, Galway. We've seen this before. We know the movie. Galway are the best team in the world when things are going well for them, but when it's put up to them, crash.
And Kildare's record on that front?
Well, Kildare are just a common force. They've been in the doldrums for the best part of a decade.
What's your evidence for that?
They've been in the doldrums for a decade.
No,
we know that.
Your evidence for them not being a Galway. Let's move them.
Well, we don't have the flash forward that they have for a start, right? So I mean, in fairness, Galway did beat us the last time they played us in a big game.
You don't have the flash forwards, as in the forwards that you think that this power rankings is based on, or?
I think that we're going to be ahead of Galway by the end of the season. I think we're ahead of Galway right now because we're a division ahead of them.
Well, I mean, Galway were
Yes.
hold on. So Galway were ahead of Kildare going into last weekend. How can you make a case that Galway should be dropped a place after their performance? The biggest winning margin across all divisions at the weekend was Galway. You look at this Galway team at the moment, like, I mean, Shane Walsh in the league is just an incredible player. It's kind of akin to any kind of like flashy back three player getting complimented for Connacht, where it's like at the sports ground, people come there and they just don't know what the wind does to them. The same goes for Shane Walsh at Pearse Stadium. He is a beast this time of the year. They've got Damien Comer to come back. Sean Fitzgerald is a big injury for them. He was going to be a big back for them, and he'll come back. And Johnny Heaney's yet to come back.
Great.
So
I'm looking forward to it.
You will layer all that on top of them beating Meath by 11 points.
Why have they collapsed over the last couple of years? What's happened to them?
Like, I mean, you're trying to paint a picture here that I believe that Galway have a steeliness to them that's going to see them in the All-Ireland.
Yeah, exactly.
They're in at number 8. This is like this is not exactly a lofty position.
There's a flakiness there that until they disprove. When someone shows you who they are, that's who they are. And they've been flaky.
And until Kildare disprove that they're flakiness, then they will be going no further as well. Like that. Let's see how the things develop. Monaghan are down to 7th place. They drew at Tyrone at the weekend. Donegal then are down 1 to 6th place. Disappointing start, I think, from Donegal's perspective when you look at the lead they had. The extra man.
You're just saying the wind is really bad. I mean, they draw at Mayo and they're 3 points, three parts behind them. But okay,
it's the context of the draw. Like, having the extra man, having that lead.
Technically a home game for Mayo, even though it was in Markovich Park. But
Donegal and Kerry did the exact same thing at the weekend, which was play a brand of football which was not based on confidence in them extending their leads. And they both let big leads slip. And they both are open to big criticism for what happened to them at the weekend. But open to bigger criticism, obviously, is Dublin, who are in 5th place at the moment. They lost to Armagh by 5 points.
Now, this is shocking. This is the first time this has ever happened. Like, Dublin, you took Dublin off number 1. I think we're Dublin still number 1 after the All-Ireland semi-finals last year. Until the All-Ireland final.
Mayo definitely went in at number 1.
Right,
definitely.
Okay. Well, that was they were 3rd. They were still 2nd, I suspect, were they?
Yeah, they were 2nd until last weekend, yeah.
And now they've gone from 2nd to 5th.
Yeah.
You're loving this. This must be the most enjoyable thing that you've ever done, is it?
No, it's not.
This is like...
Fall of an empire is a terrible thing.
People talk about like their wedding day and the birth of their children. You're going to be like, well, it was that day that I made the Dubs 5th. It was amazing. How do you feel? This is like straight into the Dubs WhatsApp group.
Yeah, I'm sure it is. I'm sure they'll be fuming with this. And
what message do you have for them? Why are they 5th?
Well, I think are you looking around at the other top 4 at the moment, and are you saying, do Armagh deserve to stay below Dublin first of all? I think on the evidence of Saturday night, especially because it's week 1. And it's the nature of these rankings that we have 100% of the evidence of the competitive season is last weekend.
Yeah.
These two teams faced off against each other. Armagh weren't that far below Dublin in the rankings anyway. I think that leapfrogging is fair enough. I think then, where are you putting Armagh? Are you putting them ahead of Mayo? Are you putting them ahead of Kerry? Are you putting them ahead of Tyrone? And I think the answer to all those 3 questions is no, not yet. Potentially, but not yet. So therefore, Armagh come into number 4. And you've got to take Dublin out of that top 4. So that's how you make this work. And Dublin end up at number 5. And I don't think it's I don't think it's like hyperbole to suggest that on the evidence of the year so far, they're in and around the 5th best team in the country. There is every chance that they come back over the next little while and in 3 weeks' time are sitting at number 1 of these rankings.
On the basis of the performance we've seen so far?
On the basis of the performance we've seen so far, they are not in the top 4, no. But the performances have, as I said yesterday, been below par and below the standards of the players that were available to them on Saturday. And I do believe that there will be a bounce back from Dublin this year. I'm not convinced anymore that it will be a bounce back to get them over the line in an All-Ireland final this year, or to get them back on the roll of honour again. But I think that the bounce will happen at some stage. They're better, I think, than the 5th best team in the country. Or sorry, they will be better than the 5th best team in the country.
But as it stands, they're the 5th best team in the country. You think they're going out in the quarterfinals?
I think that, I think that Armagh were convincing winners against them on Saturday. I think that if Dublin took on Mayo right now, I think Mayo would beat them again. And I think the same goes for Kerry and Tyrone.
Obviously, if it was played now, the 2 Ulster teams would have to knock each other out at some point, and so therefore one of them would be coming through the back door, and maybe they would end up playing the Dubs, but maybe they wouldn't, and so the Dubs get a handy enough All-Ireland quarter-final, because the system doesn't work. It's completely screwed up. We're going to talk about that again. Mark says, Galway are a Division 2 team. Kildare drew with the second best team on the power rankings. Surely that warrants moving upwards. 100% of the evidence of the season so far would suggest that Kildare are a match for Kerry. But no, because Galway hammered what we're saying is a bad Meath team.
There are worse teams than me. They're in net number 13.
So you beat the 13th place team, you stay in the top 8, you draw with the second best team, you don't move. This doesn't make any sense.
It does. Makes perfect sense. if you
hate Kildare, I get it. You get it. I understand.
No, Kildare have been famously very lovable county.
I always enjoy the fact that the power rankings are in the Mayo colours. Where Mayo after? So you're giving Mayo super bonus points for having a man sent off, saving a penalty, and needing a last gasp equaliser from their goalkeeper to squeak a point at home.
They'd stay in third place. You're not putting.
Would you not put Armagh? Do you not actually? The power rankings are going to be supposed to be like this is this week, snapshot of this week. At the moment, you'd have to say what Armagh did was absolutely annihilate Dublin in a league match, dominate them from start to finish. Maybe the second goal was a bit of a fluke, but they should have scored loads more goals. Dublin came back at them at the start of the second half, and Armagh were like, "Yeah, Grant, is that all you got?
Yeah, what's
Armagh were Muhammad Ali.
Well, see, the thing is, I think what you're talking about here, Ger, is
that was Rumble in the Jungle. They were taking out George Foreman.
You're actually taking a very patronising tone towards Armagh here.
I'm saying Armagh is the second best team in the country at the moment.
You're suggesting
that they should be number 2 in those power rankings.
Suggesting that I tickled the belly on the basis of last Saturday, and yes, that could happen, but. When you read, say, Oisin McConville and it's the Examiner printing his comments this morning, he really believes that Armagh are back. This is not a one-off result. So let's see it happen. Let's see Armagh now back this up and beat Mayo, Kerry, or this weekend Tyrone, and then they rise. Of course they do. This is just a staging post. No need to get carried away with bringing Armagh up the rankings. They're on a nice slow burn all the way up. If they're really back. They will break into that top 3. So patience is all I ask for. We don't need to hand out those belly rubs just yet on that front. I think going up to 4 is a pretty good reflection of what's happened so far this year. And I don't think Mayo have necessarily deserved to get punished for what happened on Sunday. Because, you're pointing to things that indicated that they were chasing a game for a long time. But they did get back into it and they did manage to get the draw. And I don't know, I would say, arguably, there's a bit more bottle about this Mayo team now than some of the other teams around them, like the team they were up against in Donegal, and I would argue potentially in Kerry as well. And that's going to be a really interesting storyline as the year develops. The bottle that Kerry potentially don't have.
Kerry have no bottle.
I would say, and John Fogarty made this point this morning, that when Kerry win big games, they win by a big margin. And let's see. Okay, so. You can't really say last Sunday was a big game, and Kerry have struggled at times in the league over the last couple of years to maybe kill off a game like that. But it's just the timing of that result. Their first competitive game since the collapse against Tyrone last year, where they got inside their own heads, I believe, to a huge degree that day. And I believe that is the biggest problem for them this year, to try and get over this mentality mountain that they've created for themselves, where they maybe overcomplicate things at times and just look like they choke at the biggest moments, because that has been a repeated trend of this team over the last little while. Nobody would question the quality of footballer that they have. They've tried out a lot of different things in the backroom team, from Pat Falvey last year, Tony Griffin's come in working with Kerry this year. And the other thing from Fogarty's column today is that I think it's actually the headline on the front of the Examiners: do Kerry have the edge to win the All-Ireland? And when he asks that question, you know what the answer he believes is, and the answer he thinks is no. And really, if you're being honest about Kerry at the moment, do you think they have that edge? To if it's them versus Tyrone and it's 9 points apiece in a league final, or maybe in an All-Ireland final in particular. It has
to be an All-Ireland final for me to really care too much about what the outcome is going to be, because if they lose a league final to Tyrone, I don't care.
Okay, so go All-Ireland final against Tyrone, Mayo, Dublin. That's the level scores going into injury time. Who are you backing?
Well, is Clifford fit?
Yeah, everybody's fit.
Okay, I think the time, if Kerry can't win that, something's gone wrong. Clifford is the best footballer. He's a generational talent in a way that we don't 100%. Have any other generational talents at the moment. We kind of thought that maybe it was him versus Con, but actually it's not. He is on a pedestal on his own. I was making the argument for Con for a long time, but Con came back to the pack last year and looked markable. Clifford is unmarkable.
He is.
At the weekend,
himself and O'Shea were outstanding against Tyrone last year. But
and then he got injured and they lost the game. So when you're talking about the collapse,
I accept that. But there were signs of Kerry.
Yeah, but there were signs of Tyrone
before that the cramp came for Clifford. Yes, if he was on the pitch, maybe they win the game. We don't know. We can only judge what we actually do know, and we do know that before Clifford got injured, there were a lot of other players on that team who'd been.
I'm not sure their defence is as strong as it needs to be, and I'm not sure they have the individual defenders who can live with the patterns of play that the best teams are exhibiting at the moment. We haven't seen that, and it's not Kerry's fault, but the system is so screwed that they don't get the opportunity to test their mettle against other Division 1 teams in championship environments. So they don't get to play Donegal, they don't get to play Monaghan, and they don't get to play Tyrone to go, what are the challenges for these guys? Are these two up as a partnership along the left side of our defence? Are these two in the middle of our defence? Are they good enough? When we need a sweeper, who's that sweeper going to be? And do they understand what the Tyrone players are doing with their movement, or what the Donegal players are doing with their movement? Who's marking Ryan McHugh? We don't get to test that.
Well, I know that may come across as a harsh question in Kerry's bottle, but I actually think that defensively, the early signs, if we're rushing to over-exaggerate things here, like I just have, then the defence looks better. There is an idea of a swarm tackling that has emerged, possibly under Paddy Tally. Maybe that's just sort of, you see Tally on the side and you're like, well, that's why that's happening. But also, the implementation of a sweeper is not something that Kerry have ever nailed in the past. It looks good at the moment with Tadhg Morley playing as a sweeper. The problem that killed them on Sunday was in possession. They were too ponderous and weren't adventurous enough when they were 2 points up with 10 minutes to play, and Kildare came back into the game and drew with them. For me, that is a question of bottle and not having the self-confidence to actually go and win that game. Defensively, I thought they were actually good. So it'll be interesting to see if that actually develops and is real over the course of the summer when they come up against these teams. Just to mention Tyrone, who stay at number 1. You can see why James O'Donoghue was saying last week that they could get relegated, because they were poor in pre-season. They're coming back from a holiday. They don't tend to go well back-to-back years. But you'd be quietly very encouraged by what you saw from Tyrone at the weekend if you were a Tyrone fan. What's with the laugh?
They don't tend to go well back-to-back years. 3 All-Ireland in 5 seasons, not enough for you. But okay, fair enough.
They literally have never won back-to-back All-Irelands.
Well, it's much harder. It's much harder for them to do that, and there's been reasons in every year. I think that I don't know. I think that. They're going to have a good season this year. I think that they're going to be excellent. I think that they have strength and depth that we talked about last week in a way that many teams. I know Tiernan McCann stepping away is a loss for them, but at the same time, you actually need players like that sometimes to step away, to give somebody else the opportunity, so somebody else comes in and gets those minutes, and it turns out they're the next. Like the club football in Tyrone is at a level that seems to be higher than most of the other clubs that we see in those games. There's an entertainment value to those that hasn't always been evident in the other ones. So, right.
Yeah.
They're number 1 on merit.
Yeah.
I don't think they should get knocked off even if they have a bad league. You know,
I'm not sure. You'd have to see how bad the league is, but I think the early signs are very encouraging. Dooher even saying in the aftermath of the game that he parked the All-Irelands pretty soon after they won it last year, which suggests to me a manager who has taken the experience of not going back to back into the 2000s and might be able to instill something. But I think there was also, maybe he was sending out a bit of a warning shot to some of his players. Actually, I think there was a sense from his comments that some of them did really enjoy the winter and are still on the high of winning the All-Ireland last year.
Well,
that's human nature.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, they are the ones who, in the roll of honour, will be the one that comes after the greatest team of all time, which means that they get the credit for knocking them off in some ways. Poor Mayo. So we'll talk about Mayo properly again, because we talk about Mayo a lot.
We do.
Yeah. All right. It's 8:39 this morning. That is your power rankings and the comments coming in. I always enjoy the fact to do that one. Sorry. London for Sam, says Hugh. Dara says, not exactly in any given Sunday rousing speech for the Dubs, from Owen there. He's like,
that was my intention.
No. Well, it's somebody in the dressing room supposed to give that. He's just the one. He's the bulletin board material. You can get an NFT of the power rankings. We should sell NFTs of the power rankings for like €1 million. Would that be about right? That seems
I only accept Ethereum for my power rankings.
Galway in Division 2 is irrelevant. You always have one poor team in Division 1 and 1 or 2 better teams in Division 2. It's the way the thing is structured, says Aina. Matthew says, if the Dubs beat Kerry at the weekend, will Kerry move below the Dubs?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah, why not?
Alright, okay. Ger can never let go of 98 when it comes to talking about Galway. It's not that, it's just that they were the best team in the country before COVID, and then they barely won an important game since. Now, in fairness, they had a good comeback against Mayo when the game looked lost and they got it to a point, but What's the real Galway? That's the question we're asking. Right, if you want to get in touch, 087 918 180 is the WhatsApp number. OTB AM is brought to you by Gillette. Good morning. Start with Gillette. Put your best face forward with their new and improved razors. We're moving on. Littlewoods Ireland is 100% committed to Camogie. Littlewoods Ireland continues its pledge to encourage supporters to attend games and support their county at this year's Littlewoods Ireland Camogie Leagues. The Littlewoods Ireland Camogie Leagues begin this Saturday, the 5th of February. To purchase your tickets, visit camogie.ie and the hashtag is Style of Play. I'm delighted to say we're joined by All-Star Niamh Rockett this morning. Niamh, good morning to you. How are you getting on? Hey Niamh, can you hear us? Oh, the line is frozen. There you go. Just at the precise moment. So the Camogie season starts this weekend, and I think that there's been a huge investment in some of the teams in particular in recent years. Look at the investment that Galway have got. Galway were already right there in terms of the quality of players they have and the depth they have at club level as well. So it'd be interesting to see if that has a significant medium-term impact on where the All-Irelands go in the next couple of years.
Yeah, because we did a piece on that over the last while, even just kind of like the access to pitches and the facilities that are being made available to the Galway team at the moment, and it seems like it's a complete sea change from where it was 5 to 10 years ago at this point. Like, it's bad that that's even still a conversation, but I guess there's still a bit of an edge that you get over certain counties when you do have that at your disposal over the last little while. So they might have the crosshairs on this year for sure, but yeah, this weekend it all gets underway. All
right, we think we have Niamh back with us. Niamh, good morning to you.
Morning, how are you?
Yeah, good. The line is coming through loud and clear there. At the start of a league campaign like this, what's your own level of expectation and what are you trying to get out of the league?
Yeah, look, I suppose when the league and the championship are so close this year, it's really, really like kind of you go from one game to the next game and you're nearly kind of using it as prep for championship, which is really, really good. Like the kind of shorter season this year is going to make all the league really, really competitive. So you'd be hoping to put in a good performance and I suppose build momentum as you're going.
Again, just talking about the Paddy Andrews talking on the podcast recently was saying how they actually really enjoyed the league because it was week after week after week, and there's very few times of the year where you get that. And maybe this year with the shortened season you will actually get that from a championship perspective as well. But playing games is the reason you train, and so I suspect you actually really enjoy the league.
Yeah, like you definitely do. I suppose any player as well is not going to be hoping that there's a big space between matches because that's usually when the running comes and the harder training comes in. But no, you love playing games, you love the competitive element, and making that, learning from every game, doing your video analysis then and trying to improve every game. And the fact that they come so quickly one after another, it's good marking for you, your own performance and the team's performance and how you're progressing to build up for our championship.
I realise that Camogie and all the Gaelic sports are team sports, obviously with the exception of handball, but you know what I mean. And sometimes when you're singled out, it can be a bit strange. But actually, at the other side of that, sometimes being singled out helps to inspire your teammates as well. What's your own kind of experience been like of becoming an all-star, and has it made any difference to your life? Yeah,
look, I suppose. When I got my all-star last year, there was no one more proud than my father at the time. It was like his dreams came true, and I suppose that came with its own pressure as well. There's an expectation there that when you get your all-star that you have to live up to that certain standards. But I was so thrilled to win it. You probably saw a few videos. I was going around Coast Station. The dog was thrown up in the air, and there was champagne popped, and there was wicked celebrations in my house. Anyway. We're celebrating for probably about a week or two after, I'd say, with the whole thing. But I was just so happy for my friends and my family. And I suppose they don't, although it's an individual accolade, my friends, my family, and the other girls on the team, you wouldn't be it's a team sport. You wouldn't be next or near anything without the support of your family when you're gone off for long days, or your friends and the girls are around you that are playing there, the backs will give me wicked grief now because they'd say I'd just be there to take the scores when I can, but no, I wouldn't be anywhere next year without it. But it does come with its own pressure of living up to that expectation and trying to better your performance for the following year.
That's true, isn't it? Because you don't want to go away from the things that made you an all-star in the first place, and there is that kind of trap that a lot of people fall into, I suspect, where it's like, oh geez, I have to be absolutely 10 out of 10 in every game, whereas the truth is you need to be relaxed and do your own natural game while maybe using it as inspiration for training as opposed to the actual matches itself. How do you get that balance right?
Yeah, look, it's really, really hard to get the balance right. I suppose that you're trying to deal with you're trying to be, I suppose, being captain as well. Like, you were trying to deal with the whole trying to bring the team on and trying to lead from the front and lead by example. But it was that little bit of additional pressure when there was an expectation there. So I suppose what I did is I kind of, when I went into overdrive training, once I'm prepared for the game, prepared going into my league match, prepared going into my championship matches, that I feel a lot more at ease and a lot less pressure. It is very hard, like, to block out the external influences of putting the pressure on yourself, but you're kind of your own worst enemy when you're putting that undue pressure on yourself. So I just try to prepare as best I can, whether it's going to the pitch that morning or going a couple of extra shooting sessions in, and just, I suppose, making sure that I have no stone left unturned, so that when I go out to the pitch, that there's nothing more I could have done for the game, whether the game goes right or wrong for me, that there's nothing more I could have done. I've done my preparation as best I can.
You talked about the celebrations of your friends and family, and I suppose your family in particular would have been very familiar with your backstory, which I think the rest of the country is kind of only beginning to become familiar with. There was definitely a stage of your life when you were a teenager where it looked like you were going to have to give up sport. Can you just tell us a bit about what happened?
Yeah, when I was 16, I was playing like hockey, soccer, football, camogie, any sport I was going, I was playing, and I suppose I kind of started running with a bit of a limp. And my manager at the time for club decided to get me to go for keyhole surgery in Waterford. And when I came out, they wanted to kind of break my knees and realign them. They said I had malalignment in my knees and that I shouldn't be playing sports at all, which was devastating for me. I was going to be a PE teacher. I was sports for my whole life. It's like your whole identity. I kind of persevered on. My father was quite upset. My mum was quite upset. And more so out of stubbornness now, I'd say, than anything. I pushed forward, try my best to put it to the back of my mind. A lot of physio work, a lot of chiropractors, chiroprators, you name it, I went to. Eventually then I wasn't reaching the performances that were expected of me, I suppose. When my dad and my brother played for Waterford in both codes, it was a lot of pressure put on myself, but I wasn't reaching performances. And then in a league match against Meath, I went up for a ball and my knee kept coming out of place, and I didn't run for 15 months after that, and I was diagnosed with arthritis in my knee then. So it was a big adjustment for me for my life. I'm just about it. I was really, really down over it. Only for my friends and my family and knowing what I did, or going down to Cork and going under Portacleve and Barty and trying to run underneath the tunnel down there, and just the sweat coming out through and tears coming out here. They're the things I won't forget. Nowadays I can manage it a bit better, I suppose, doing a lot of gym work and doing all the work I can, getting my operations on it and taking a break when I need to. But I often get grief from the girls or the family at home saying I played an e-card often if things are going against me, just my knee is sore. But to be only black arguments, no, I take it in good faith now. I can just about get on with it now. But it is a full-time job managing it and keeping up my gym program, keeping up my thing. Thank God, like the manager this year, Derek Lyons, is very, very good to me, and like any of the strenuous pitch sessions or things that are too strenuous on my knee, I take a bit of a break. I've only gone back to pitch sessions this week. Was just doing knee work and knee rehabilitation the last couple of months when we finished championship, just to get right for this season now. I think doing that, having that bit of extras, gives me a bit more longevity, and it prepares me for the league and the right time.
And Niamh, do you find that you're any bit behind your teammates at all when you're not partaking in some of those sessions? Because I assume the answer to that question is no, and it probably is a bit of a lesson to maybe how hard people need to be pushed in pre-season.
Yeah, look, I think that there's kind of for and against it. Like, when you're doing your own program, it requires a lot of self-discipline, and I suppose only for I know quite a bit about myself, what I should be doing, what I shouldn't be doing, and thank God Kenny Murphy taught me a lot about knees and knee programs. He's a physio down in Waterford, that I know what I should be doing and what I shouldn't be doing to be at the right time. It is quite tough, I won't lie, like mentally, like, preparing yourself to go back, thinking that you might have that edge on the girl beside you. But then again, like, I just think back at the times that the work that I've done over the winter time, I went back, and I suppose you have to go back with the mentality. I think your mind can be your biggest your biggest enemy. Like, you know, if I was coming back with the thing, thinking I don't have enough done, do I have enough done? Will I be right? Will I not be right? I just have to trust in the process and trust that come championship, come league time, that I'll be right and I'll be right at the right time, rather than come April or May blowing up and maybe the hard ground going into the soft ground, going into the hard ground then would kind of wreak havoc with me. But I trust the people around me and trust that they know what's best for me. I wouldn't be an expert in the S&C or whatever the case is, and that the people around me would know it and that they'll have me right at the right time.
Well, you've obviously surrounded yourself with very good people. It led to an All-Star last year. Niamh, we wish you the very best of luck with this season and continued success. Thanks a million for joining us this morning.
Thanks a million, thank you.
That's Niamh Rockett there, an All-Star from Waterford, to help launch the restart of the Camogie season, which gets underway. They have Westmeath on Saturday. The Littlewoods Ireland Camogie Leagues begin this Saturday. You can get tickets at camogie.ie. John Duggan is with us at 8:51 this morning on a lap of honour, John.
Profit before Porter, lads. Profit before Porter. We've got to wait until the profit is secured for the year before we go on the mad binge of pints and champagne. Responsibly, obviously.
You've got to celebrate the little victories along the way, or the big 80-1 ones.
Well, it wasn't bad, was it? As they said in some movie or something.
Gaza.
Yeah.
What about your start to the game? It wasn't bad, was it?
He'll get me suit measured.
So just for anybody who hasn't got a clue what we're talking about,
Joseph Conroy is the great producer. Is that on the? Can you get that on the screen?
Which?
The evidence of what happened the other day.
So,
I gave him the screenshot of Luke List winning the Farmers Insurance Open at 80-1. So yeah,
Luke List. We don't have it, unfortunately. Sorry, it didn't make it through the back seat. So last week's Virtual Insanity.
Yeah,
I had missed Luke List on your list.
Well, you know, you need to pay more attention, like Owen Sheahan did.
Well, Owen Sheahan did, yes. The late night texts sliding into.
I was going, maybe Owen might have imbibed some hooch.
It's Porter before everything else, John.
I just got the sense from the flavour of the texts at the nocturnal hour that Owen might have had a few woodies.
Undying love.
That money does strange things to people. Look, it was really weird.
You had first and second.
First and second.
In the playoff.
Will Zalatoris was the headline tip. 28-1 was leading most of the day. It was utterly exhausting to watch it because it was like never betting running, because like Jason Day holed out, John Ram was making a charge, like there was so many players in contention, and Zalatoris I thought would win it, but I had one up my sleeve, which was Luke List, who actually went in the clubhouse with the 66. So it was a bizarre situation where I actually had two players I was going to win either way. On Virtual Insanity, with Luke List at 80-1 and Zalatoris at 28-1 both each way. So 6 golfers tipped. They all made the cut. And I suppose watching it for 6 hours a week is beginning to pay off, but it's a case you can't get carried away. It's only just 1 week. There'll be ups and downs, but look, it's better to see it that going that way than the other way.
100%. We're sending Owen to. Does everybody know about this? Have we told everybody that you're going to Wales? You're going off to fight the invading hordes.
I like to tell people about it after it's happened as opposed to before.
Okay, sorry.
You just never know. Like, I mean,
Valley Gold. I told him to meet Bootlegger. I don't know if that's going to happen, Owen.
We'll see. Still working on a few things. Bootlegger, of course, good football man, good man for the beer, isn't he?
Have you seen Bootlegger on Twitter, Ger?
No.
He's this mad Wrexham supporter who likes his beer, and he's actually got his own brew, his own beer being sold in Wales. He's that popular on social media. So but look, Wales is an interesting place.
I mean, it is. Oh, and I wish you the very best of luck. I think Ronan O'Gara had a pin when the poor French team were arriving off the bus, stunned by the nudity of the men and the women on a cold January night after a Champions Cup game.
Yeah, or even like a Rabo Direct game or something like that. French player. Sorry, yeah, so it was a Champions Cup game. Sorry,
the flesh pots of Swansea. Yeah.
I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to get time to
well,
Swansea,
come on, it's work, Owen. We're charging you with checking out said flesh pots.
There may or may not be other flesh spots in Wales that are more pressing given the schedule and some of the plans that I have. So all will be revealed over the next couple of days.
If you get pressed in a flesh pot, it's all in the name of work.
It's all in the name of work.
Just call it mining for information.
It's called, gonzo journalism.
Exactly. Well, look, it was everybody's ambition at one point. Anyway.
The Hunter S. Thompson of OTB.
Exactly. This is the bit where we were a year early in our prognostications about us dragging Wales into the deep water and drowning their national rugby team this weekend. We are going to kill them, right? This is it. This is the bit where their team despite their fluky win in the championship last year, which we all know was a complete fluke, because every game they had a fluky thing that happened to them. This year's not going to happen. You ride your luck occasionally and you get away with it, but they ain't getting away with it this time. They're coming to Dublin and they're getting spanked.
It might be a bit like 2002. I think it was Eddie O'Sullivan's first game. I think that was 54-10 or something like that. I kind of feeling it's going to be like that this weekend. We've got a clean bill of health. They've got a huge amount of injuries. And the way we played in the autumn would really bode well for us. Now, Wales have always travelled well to Dublin, but I think history does go out the window this weekend.
Not the last time, John, which supports your point. They travelled poorly to Dublin last time. Pivek's first Six Nations game.
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
Yeah, and they were very poor that day. I think that kind of informed a lot about the predictions ahead of last year's Six Nations, but we kind of underplayed the fact that, home advantage, even during COVID, does count for a significant amount in the Six Nations. So you're calling 44 points, Sean? Something like that?
I would say 20 points, at least 20 points.
Sure.
I think we'll beat them by 12 points.
12?
Yeah. I think it'll be like a 24-12, that kind of territory.
Yeah.
21-9.
Right. Good to see you guys in the prediction game. That always goes well before the Six Nations.
Yeah. Well, we've tended to score a lot of points when we're playing well, although it's hard to know what are the conditions like. I haven't checked the weather yet, which obviously always has an impact here in Six Nations games. At the early Six Nations games, sometimes we've had a few. The draw at Wales, was that Kidneys last season?
There was a Wayne Barnes, I think, was refereeing one of those draws, I remember, in Dublin.
Yeah, like the thing, I can't quite remember, but like the thing with the last year's Six Nations is that Wales were just this try-scoring machine. They scored 20 tries over the course of the championship last year. It was just this incredible record, and you have to hand it to them that's what won them the championship, was just this at times swashbuckling rugby. Like, they've had surely too many injuries to be able to do the same thing this year, but there has to be some part of your psyche as predictors here that says that is thinking, God, Wales could do another Wales.
Wales could do a Wales, but if they do, then that's on us.
It is.
We've got to stop letting them do this.
It's on us.
Yeah. Come on, is our rugby culture so weird and flaky that we can't actually just continue in the vein that we've been in for the last period of time? That a penny dropped at some point. I if there hadn't been a red card last year, what would have happened in that game?
We probably would have won the game.
Well, Ireland do take the lead after the red card.
No, but that takes its toll, I think, through the latter stages of the match.
Yeah, but that's my point, is that they managed to do that even with 14 men. Do they take a bigger lead? Do they manage to hold on to that
Never
lead?
give a sucker an even break. That Welsh team was on the verge of implosion, and we turned them into world beaters, and that's what can happen with Wales. Their culture is so ingrained that everybody, it seems, is capable of playing great rugby at moments of crisis, and they were in a moment of crisis, and we let them back into the game, and that's not going to happen this year. I mean, look, maybe there's a red card, maybe there's a clash of heads, and three of our lads take each other out early on. It's the Six Nations, it's rugby. You can't predict that that's not going to happen, but on balance we should beat them by 10 to 12 points.
That's probably what the bookies are saying, isn't it? I think were we saying that last week, that Wales were 6-1, and then there was about a 12-point spread on the game as well. Like, it's just
14-point spread on the game.
14-point spread, so you're actually not you're not even backing Ireland to cover, and it's still a 12-point win. So yeah, like, there's no getting away from the fact that
we could beat them 25 points here. It could be 45-20.
That's
easily.
Yeah. That's certainly the evidence that we're dealing with. You look at the relative bills of health, and Ireland have everybody available, and Wales do not. And it's in Dublin, and it's a full house. And all those points are significant. It's just this intangible, isn't it? It's just the intangible voice in your head saying, remember 2021. Never forget 2021.
Yeah. We're better than them.
In fairness, I do recall you saying before the 2019 game against England, where there was confidence elsewhere in the studio, you were saying that no, this England team are on the way back. Don't get overly cocky, despite the 2018 that we had about this fixture against England, and they burst the bubble entirely on Ireland's 2019, as it turned out.
Who was saying that?
You were saying that.
Oh, was I?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm glad you remember that, because I didn't.
No, it was. And then last year, I think we both dug holes.
We were right though about Wales last year. It was a fluke that they won the way they won last year. And you can't ride your luck that much.
Yeah. the people, like time will tell. I admire that you think it's already written, but I'm just gonna wait to see for it to happen. Like there's a reason why there's a 14 point spread.
You're just scared of it because you're going over there.
Yeah. 100%.
Stop being scared. They're nice people.
You're going to come back in a Wales jersey, aren't you?
I mean, yeah, exactly. Like, I mean, I'm going over to Flesh Spots.
You're going to come back with a new accent.
Flesh Pot.
Sorry, Flesh Pot. Sorry, Flesh Spots. Yes, that's where I'm going. So that, I mean, you gotta be a little bit cautious on that front.
John, anything else you want to say about the Welsh?
No, not really.
All right. And Dele Alli.
St. Patrick's came from Wales.
It is true.
We're getting the double day off this year. Quickly, Dele Alli. If they get 40 million for Dele Alli, if Dele Alli goes on and wins a Golden Boot, a European Footballer of the Year, and becomes the best player in the world, still 40 million, I would say, is an amazing bit of business. It's free, but not free. It's like they're obviously paying him at least 10 million in wages over the next 2.5 years. Probably way more.
Dele Alli can be encapsulated in the 2016-17 season. He played 50 times for Tottenham, 22 goals and 13 assists. Last season, 29 games he played, 3 goals and 5 assists. He played 145 minutes under Antonio Conte, just 3 appearances in the Premier League under Conte. I don't think professional footballers can get it back by magic dust being sprinkled on them by Frank Lampard. And I don't think it's going to work for Dele Alli, sadly.
All right. Good stuff. JD, thanks a million.
Well, lads.
9:09 here on OTB AM. You're very welcome. If you've just joined us, you've missed a really good show. Owen's Power Rankings have Dublin down at number 5. It's the first time that has ever happened. So if you want to get on that, you can abuse him on the YouTube channel, or you can get him at Owen Sheahan on Twitter as well. OTB AM is brought to you by Gillette. Good morning. Start with Gillette. Put your best face forward with their new and improved razors. Now, let's go to Australia and join Catherine Murphy to talk about the celebrating Australian tennis public, I think, after a remarkable Australian Open comes to a conclusion with success in the men's doubles, but more importantly, success in the women's singles as Ash Barty delivers on her incredible promise. Talk to us a little bit about Ash Barty, Catherine, and just how popular a character she is.
Hello, Ger. Hello, Owen. She is so loved in Australia. It was such an emotional night, and everyone in the crowd was actually really nervous because, honestly, you will not find a human in Australia that doesn't love Ash Barty, or you certainly won't find a player on the tennis tour that doesn't love her. She is just so universally admired and such a good person and such an amazing player. But it was actually so nerve-wracking watching her match because the pressure that she must have been under, or clearly managed to deal with, was just huge because, you know, it had been so long since a woman had won their home slam. It had been 1978, and that was Chris O'Neill all that way back then. And that was talked about all week. And when she walked out into the stadium and the Australian flags, she's walking past them, there's an Aboriginal flag just above her in the crowd, and she's so proud of her Indigenous heritage. It was so emotional. I could hear people around me just saying, I'm so nervous, I can't relax. Like, for a lot of people, it wasn't a really enjoyable match until she got it done. And as she said afterwards in the press conference, Ger, she was so relieved that, you know, now it's done. We can all stop talking about the drought. And, you know, maybe she'll come back and I'm sure she'll win it again, but she won't have to go through all of that pressure. Now, there was some distractions which really helped her during the week. As you said, in the doubles, Nick Kyrgios and Thanasi Kokkinakis, she would have been so relieved to at least have to share the spotlight. But to deliver under that pressure, I'm in awe of what she did.
She's 25, so kind of in a sweet spot for tennis at this stage, where you've got the experience, you're still young enough to be able to beat the teenagers who are coming along, and there's a period now where she also has proven it on multiple surfaces too, where she can legitimately lay claim to being the best woman in the world. So what's the future hold for her, and what are her own expectations around that?
Well, would you believe when she was asked about this during the press conference, she straight away said, I can do more. I need to get better in a number of areas. It was quite bizarre. And her coach, Craig Tyser, had done a press conference just before her. And he had said the exact same thing, that there's a lot of things she's still working on. But like you said, she is now part of just this incredible company where of all the active players today, she is, along with Roger, Rafa, Novak and Serena, the only other player to have won on all surfaces. And the only tournament she hasn't won is the US Open. Now, her coach, it was quite interesting. He was asked by Chris Clary of the New York Times, who I just think is just not just the best tennis writer in the world, he's the best sports writer in the world. And he asked, you know, how's she going to go in my hometown in New York? And her coach, and it sounded really premeditated, he said she can't win the US Open because of the balls they use. They use different balls, which I didn't know, in the women's draw compared to the men's tournament. He says they're too light. They don't suit her game. She won't adapt to it. And he said that's why you'll see, you know, he didn't say those random players who won, but it was a little bit of a, if I was Emma Raducanu, I wouldn't have liked what he said, but he insists that Ash can't win a major in New York while they have those balls. And I'm not an expert on them, Ger, on the technicalities of that.
I'm not either, with the lightness, but it was certainly throwing shade at Emma Raducanu and ramping up a little bit of pressure and ramping up pressure on the organisers. You get to do that when you've won. If she'd lost, there would have been one of those, why are they whining about this? But look, you mentioned the doubles there, and so Ash Barty's had success in doubles, and there was a touching moment with her doubles partner as well, and she seems to have used that as a way of helping her become better at singles. And you know, whatever she's done, everybody's kind of putting that two and two together. Is there any possibility that Nick Kyrgios uses this as a springboard, or is he just having the crack?
Sure, I think he's just having the crack. But honestly, talk about having the crack. Those boys, like, I don't know how they've done it. I think the way they said it was they rolled up the couch and they won a Grand Slam. Like, the fact they made the final was crazy. And it was almost like the victory party for Ash Barty. Like, we've had this amazing Australian woman, the world number one, win, and now it's like the after party, but it's a rock concert. And it was like Nick Kyrgios and Thanasi Kokkinakis, they were playing against two Aussies, Ebden and Purcell, which was a real shame because we didn't get to see the Australian crowd make it really difficult for their opponents, because there were mixed feelings and people were feeling a little bit bad for their opponents, but there's no doubt they had the majority of the support. They look like they're having so much fun. They've been really polarizing here. I, for one, am a huge fan of them. I just think tennis should be for everybody. And it shouldn't be a case of, only tennis types should go to the tennis. That's just snobbery. So I've loved what they've done. They've attracted a young, new fan base that are talking about tennis. Certainly the crowd's behaviour in Melbourne changed, but I think there was a few different factors. Like, I, for one, I don't like to hear the crowd calling out between a first and second serve. I think that's really harsh. And that was actually happening both sets of players. In fact, Nick Kyrgios kicked someone out of the stands. The umpire wasn't going to do it. So he just walked up and told this guy who was cheering to just get out. So that's where Nick Kyrgios is at. He's also doing chair umpire from time to time. But I don't think it's all the Special K's fault that sort of crowd element crept in. You have to remember, in Melbourne, we've been locked up for the best part of 2 years. And then you let us all out and you expect us to behave well. I say there are consequences, and I think the crowd is so happy to be out that they're just treating everything like a night out.
Basically, you're saying they're like a GAA team who's been off the booze for 18 months and then wins the club championship.
That's so true. Like, you can't lock humans up and then give them this amazing sports event to go to, and we haven't been out for so long that we just, honestly, we don't know how to behave ourselves anymore.
Is there a way in which this Australian Open doesn't get remembered as the Novak Djokovic Australian Open? Like, are all the positive stories that have happened over the last couple of days, I guess, have they all overshadowed the Djokovic saga in a positive way?
I never thought that was possible, but yes. But I think it took every one of those stories to make that happen. So you had Ash Barty, who's now just an iconic Australian. Dylan Olcott is a quad wheelchair singles champion. He won the Australian Open 7 years in a row. He has such a huge following in Australia. It was his farewell tournament that got a lot of headlines. Sam Stosur, former US Open champion, she also retired from singles. That got a lot of headlines. Then you have Rafael Nadal winning his 21st Grand Slam title and doing it in Melbourne. And Rafa loves Melbourne. And it was quite telling afterwards. He went straight to the tournament director. He hugged him. He talked about how much he loved the tournament. So did all the players after they won. But I definitely think, Owen, you needed every single one of those positive stories combined, because we all know that what happened before the Australian Open was... I don't even have words. I was on a show on Sunday and I was asking one of the other panelists on this sports talk show, do we think if Rafa gets 21, do we think, but, Novak Djokovic should have 22 because he had the default in New York and I can't believe I'm saying it, deportation. Like, who says that in a tennis chat? But I think all the positive stories have just kind of somehow superseded all of that.
Yeah, Novak's not going away though. We know he's going to be around for another couple of years. He's younger than the other two and he's not going to stop until he gets it. So, well, at the same time, perhaps they will ban him for lying on his application. That's the other side of this, that World Tennis is kind of like, oh, thanks for Australia for handling that. Now let's all move on to the next one. It's like, well, are there no repercussions for falsifying documents or allegedly falsifying documents? Is there nothing... Are you allowed to do that? Because it doesn't seem like you're allowed to do that. So I guess we'll wait and see.
Yeah, and the BBC investigation over the past few days into his PCR tests. And there are questions about that PCR and the timing of it. And so there's a lot of questions for him to answer for sure. And it's not looking good for him playing at the French Open. I heard one of my English colleagues in media say that, it won't be a problem at Wimbledon. He'll be welcomed with open arms. And I'm not sure that the French will stand by that and stop him coming in. I think there's a bit to play out in that, but there are so many questions to be answered by him.
And there's a bit of time as well. Like the world is definitely opening up and deciding that we're all moving on. COVID's over, we've decided, even though it may not be. But yeah, Catherine, great to have you with us. Thanks a million.
Thank you, Ger. Thanks, Owen. And after that big win over Leitrim, I will be booking the Croke Park Hotel.
Excellent.
They're up to 17th in the power rankings, up one place, the Heady Heights.
Oh, what? 17th?
Yeah. Highest ever possibly for a Division 4 team. So incredible scenes.
I'm sorry I brought it up, Owen.
Cheers, Catherine.
See you. Thanks, Owen.
Wales versus Ireland, the first game of the championship, usually leaves both teams half crippled, says Alan on YouTube, for the rest of the tournament because it's so physical. This is true. If we get out of that with the same number of players we have available for this one, it'll be a miracle. So that won't happen.
Is that not the point of our new style of play, that we dance around players now instead of crashing into them?
I mean, if you think about the Argentina game and the impact of one of those tackles on Caelan Doris, the Francie Brady on YouTube, hello Pig, says the annual overhyping of Irish rugby begins again.
Here we go.
It's like
you get onto the water slide of excitement.
Well, what would you do if we didn't do this? You wouldn't know it's springtime. You'd be like, discombobulated. What am I supposed to do here? I don't know. Where my life is not real.
We've done the whole Wales thing. As in Wales Online published our overhyping. Can we get into Media Olympic this year?
That's the challenge.
Can we set that challenge over the next
What
few weeks?
could we say about the French to annoy them? I mean, they're so phlegmatic and unperturbable.
Do we do like an Eddie Jones and just double down on Antoine Dupont? Not capable of captaincy.
Oh yeah,
overrated as a rugby player.
Yeah,
not a good footballer.
That's not true though. The thing that we said about Wales last year was true.
Yeah.
When we were in Paris at the Euros, I did an interview with So Foot, that football magazine. It's kind of maybe it's like the Blizzard, or it's more regular than the Blizzard, and they were smoking in the office. That's the type of place it was, right? When I went in, it was like this plumes of smoke. I'm like, this is 2016. This is not 1972. This isn't All the President's Men. This is like the Euros are on, and they hated rugby. They hated rugby more than, I would say, any GAA people hate rugby. Like, more than the regular guests that we would have on the show who hate rugby. They hated it. They were like, oh, that's just farmers. It's disgusting. What is this sport? So maybe we put those on. Good, the lads from So Foot on talk about rugby in advance of that game, and that we could start a culture war in France.
Yeah, that's definitely. Is it just pure snobbery that the football fans are the snobs?
Well, it's the other way around. It's like rich farmers.
Rich farmers, yeah.
Travel to Paris, take over the city and their stadium, they say, and like driving in their tractors and their limousines.
Are we unique in a sense of our crossover fans that like to enjoy the rugby as well as the GAA as well as the soccer? Or is that just actually not Ireland at all? Am I completely...
What country do you live in?
Sorry, it's actually just...
There's separate tribes.
Yeah, it's just...
very carefully stratified class issues.
It's just me, sorry.
Well, I suppose you're right. The Late Late Show on Friday night.
We didn't talk about this, actually.
We didn't
analyse this. We analysed all of this weekend's events except for the most important one.
I mean... The phrase "jump the shark" comes from an episode of Happy Days where they literally got the fawn to jump a shark, or one of them to jump a shark, and everybody was like, "This show's over. We've taken it too far. This is like we everybody looked around each other and was like, we had a great run, we got to this point, but now it's time to get the humane killer out, metaphorically, and retire Happy Days." And that was the end. I think it limped on for a little while afterwards, but I could see the sharks jumping, or the humans jumping the sharks in this.
Except for the one human who didn't jump the shark, but apparently he did jump the shark.
Well, that's the thing. There was like, this hero, and then you look at the tape and it's like, well, the tweet went viral about, this hero. It was a guy sitting down while everybody else was like, but actually, that was just he was reclaiming his seat to make sure he didn't miss anything first. Yeah. He was on, sit down.
I'm loath to kind of like engage in describing it as jumping the shark, because that could have been any of us. Any of us could be related to any of those people.
Sure, yeah. Well, like that's family shame.
Like that, it is.
Never mention it again.
100%. So I'm just trying to put myself in the shoes of the people.
This is the opposite of Munster beating the All Blacks. No one was there.
Well, yes.
I saw you on telly. No, it wasn't me.
It wasn't me. Yeah.
It was the brother. You don't have a brother. No, I do.
It's they've somehow gone above and beyond the crowd that they get in for the Valentine's special, which is obviously coming up in a couple of weeks.
The country special.
The country special. That it's Coppers on television.
Yeah. 18 minutes past 9 this morning. You are watching OTB AM. If you want to get in touch with us, if you have any other examples of jumping the shark that you'd like to talk about, or maybe you thought that was like good, clean, rugby loving fun, then we'd love to hear from you this morning. We're going to bring you Dele Alli next.
OTB AM on OTB Sports Radio, Ireland's first and only sports radio station.
Have you subscribed to the OTB Football Podcast? Brazil are in the mix. They're in the fight. There's no doubt about it. I mean, they've at the moment, they don't look like conceding goals. I don't think they were far off 4 years ago. I think they'll be stronger this time. They do have a trauma against European opposition. Since they've won in 2002, has ended when they've met a Western European side in the knockout stages.
Frank Kerr gave me an awful lot of hassle on the commentary last year for talking about John McGinn's arse. But then I heard John McGinn recently talking about his arse and been quite delighted with the impact his arse can make.
Subscribe now to the OTB Football Podcast stream wherever you get your podcasts, and download the OTB Sports app.
With prices from only €289 for fully comprehensive car insurance, everyone's making the jump to getsetgo.ie. New business policies only. Prices subject to minimum premiums. T's and C's apply. MCL Insurance Services Limited Trading is getsetgo.ie is regulated by the Central Bank of Ireland.
OTB AM.
With Gillette, put your best face forward with our new and improved razors.
If you have an athlete in your life, then pay attention. The Ger Eoin Foundation is today inviting applications for funding assistance for athletes requiring funding to further their athletic careers. Established in 2021 to support elite athletes in their athletic development, the foundation aims to honour Gerry's unique legacy as an educator, a coach and a mentor to students and athletes over 35 years until his untimely death in 2021. Now, thanks to the outstanding support received from the athletic and business communities, the foundation is inviting applications from athletes for funding support in 2022. You can check out gerrykieranfoundation.org. The application process will remain open for a 3-week period. It closes on the 20th of February. Now, it's time for the window wrap of Deal or No Deal.
I signed for them after the Euros, and after my first day's training, I was driving home. I was actually thinking, regretting it, what have I done? Like I walked into a circus. It's amazing, isn't it?
We're going to start with the Irish lads because they were somewhat overshadowed. None of our big players got big money transfers, and they're certainly there's no yellow strap for any of the Irish lads. But there was some movement, interesting movements, to the top of the Championship and the top of League One.
Yeah, and the Jamie McGrath one was interesting because we had a fair idea he was going to leave St Mirren. The deal was running out at the end of the season, so St Mirren wanted to get some money from him, so they got €120,000 from him. And I suppose a lot of Irish fans who have been very impressed with McGrath might have thought he could get a Championship club. Now, it does look like Wigan will be playing in the Championship next season. I don't want to touch wood now, I don't want to put the mockers on them, but they're second in League One at the moment. They have a few games in hand over leaders Rotherham, who obviously have a few Irish players in their squad as well. So all things going according to plan, Jamie McGrath will be playing in the Championship next season. So then the move looks like a much better move than it does right now. But Wigan are also a team that have been in the Premier League recent enough. We know they had financial troubles. Paul Cook was there when they got the points deduction and they didn't stay up. They avoided relegation from League One last season, and now they're flying high. And as I said, it does look good. And you've also got the added factor that there's a couple of Irish players already there in McLean and Will Keane. So I wonder, was James McLean on the phone to Jamie McGrath saying, yeah, come down? I
don't think it's a bad move, really, because if you think about it, the next 3-4 months, you hopefully are playing in a team that's playing well, you're dominating games, you're getting possession, you're getting touches, you're getting an opportunity to bed in with the fans, and next season, hopefully, they're in the Championship, and you're a nailed-on starter for a team who hopefully will finish mid-table at worst.
Yeah, and there'll be a great buzz about the place if they get back into the Championship, and it's all a bit new again because now they're thinking we're over the worst of it. The points deduction was the lowest of the low, and now they've regrouped. They've avoided relegation from League One, and they're hoping it's onwards and upwards. And it's a great signing for Wigan because McGrath has been one of the many bright sparks in the last, say, 6-7 months under Stephen Kenny, where he just looks something different that we haven't had in the Irish team.
Okay, what about QPR? They're also going quite well in the Championship. Yeah. Is this a good place for an Ireland player to be playing week in, week out if he can get in the team?
Yeah, well, there's already one Irish player in the team, Jimmy Dunn, who's part of the back three, and QPR are fourth in the Championship. Mark Warburton's in charge of them at the moment, and they're going well. Jeff Hendrick hadn't started a Premier League game for Newcastle all season, played 10 minutes in the league under Eddie Howe, and he needed to get out of there. He was 30 yesterday, and this was something that, again, he's another player that has looked very impressive in the last few games under Stephen Kenny, when we're thinking, this is the player that we want to see. This is the Jeff Hendrick we want to see getting on the ball, making things happen. And then he comes away from an international window and he's back sitting on the bench at Newcastle, sometimes not even getting on the bench. So he needs to play football. And this is what the January window tends to be about, players getting out of clubs, whether it's loan moves or permanent moves, because you're a professional footballer, the window is short enough for your playing career. And some players are happy to sit on a bench and take the nice wages, but ultimately you want to be playing football and you want to be enjoying your football. So it'd be interesting to see where he fits in, because they do play three at the back. Sometimes they'll always go with a 4 across sometimes they'll go with one behind two strikers, or they'll play one up front and play two behind one striker. So does he have a role in the midfield four as one of the two, or does he play in a more advanced role? I think he can play in either role. And again, he's going into a team that's on a good run at the moment, so that should be a good thing for him.
Again, they don't release the contracts that these players are on, but he is under contract until 2024, which means there's a couple of years left at least on his deal. And Spottrack, again, how reliable or otherwise it is, says he's on 40 grand a week. QPR could pay 40 grand a week, so they might be picking up the whole tab.
Yeah, I kind of got the impression that he was on considerably more,
right,
from Newcastle, but yeah, that's just speculation. In terms of what Jeff Hendrick needs is, he needs to get game time. He needs to show that if QPR are part of a run, whether I don't think they're good enough to get into the top two. I look at the business Bournemouth did yesterday. They brought in Nat Phillips, they've brought in Kiefer Moore, Todd Cantwell. They're already full of players that have played in the Premier League as well. And then Blackburn are up there at the moment, which have been quite a story this season. And then Fulham look like they're going to be the ones that win the league. So if QPR are going to go up, it's going to probably be through the playoffs. But if he's part of a playoff winning team, or a team that gets to the playoffs, maybe other clubs see this and they take a punt on him as well. But I said, from an Irish point of view, we need Irish players playing week in, week out. We've obviously got a big year ahead. It's important for Stephen Kenny to build on kind of the end of the last campaign, and yeah, you need players playing.
Could be QPR, West Brom, Borough, all in playoff spots. Massive Irish interest in every single one of those games.
Yeah.
So that's it. Get on the championship bandwagon once again.
Well, look, I love the championship, and the playoffs are class as well. And yeah, it'll be interesting to see. Like, there is a few teams that have hit form. Like, obviously a team that has quite a following in Ireland is Nottingham Forest, and I know they lost at the weekend, but they've kind of stepped up as well under Steve Cooper. So yeah, there's still plenty of legs to run in the championship, and there's always one team that kind of makes a late run for it. So hopefully QPR are not one of those teams that kind of falls off in the second half of the season.
Carl Heffernan's on the back of many of the papers today with Stephen Ireland in the photograph. Is Stephen Ireland officially his agent, or just a family friend / advisor? Did we get clarification on what role he's had? Certainly in interviews, the Heffernan family have been talking about the importance of Stephen Ireland in the background and helping advise them in recent years. So he's moving from Cork City to AC Milan.
Yeah, that's class, isn't it?
So we have AC Milan, Udinese and Inter.
Yeah.
It's wild.
It is, and it's great to see, because for so long players have just been fixated on moving from Ireland to England, or maybe Scotland, whereas there is a big bad world out there. Like AC Milan, I mean, even just for Carl Heffernan walking around that club, just to see all the pictures of those famous wins, European Cups, Serie A titles, and look, in fairness, they're back up challenging for league titles again, AC Milan. So how long before he's in there in the training sessions marking Zlatan?
I mean, and also at some point Paolo Maldini's going to wander down and go, "Well played, son." You'd be like, don't know, maybe he doesn't know who he is, but like, somebody will tell him this is one of the greatest defenders that has ever played the game. There's a long history of good, talented defenders there. It is wild that this has started to happen. It's
but it makes so much sense
for Ireland.
Yeah, it makes so much sense. And I said, for so long, players just made the trip across, the short trip across, and they thought, yeah, this is where it's at. But if you think about, we're developing a lot more technical players now than we used to. So you play in those leagues on the continent where you get a bit more time on the ball, but that suits technical players. Also, you go, say you play in the third or fourth tier in English football, how much ball are you going to get at your feet? Sometimes, like, the stakes are high. Look, a lot more teams are playing with the ball on the deck, but you do get games where it's all up in the air, and young technical players. I'm probably talking more someone like Kevin Zeffy, for example, who was with Shamrock Rovers. He's doing very well over in Inter Milan. But there is players, like look at what Josh Cullen is doing over in Anderlecht. Surely more Irish players must look now and think, yeah, I want a bit of that. The Dutch leagues, Belgian leagues, go over to Italy, Spain, that kind of thing, where there's a chance out there. And look, it's taken the whole Brexit thing maybe to open the eyes of some of these younger players, but what an experience as well. A different culture.
Oh, totally, yeah. All right, let's move on because we want to talk about the situation at Everton and the situation at Newcastle and the situation at Arsenal. We've only got about 6 minutes left to do this. So let's start. If you had to go to war, you're looking for dogs of war. That's what your club's tradition is based on. An unbroken history of being in the top flight. Means so much. Like the best days of your entire club's existence in the last 2 or 3 decades have been last second winners to keep you up. And you turn around the whole world and you go, Donny van de Beek, you're my man. Dele Alli, come on down. You're my dogs of war. How has Frank Lampard done this? How is he here?
Well, you've got a situation where you've got a manager who has a season and a half of Premier League experience, a season of Championship experience, and he has it all to prove, and he needed players in central midfield. Obviously, Decore is out injured again. Tom Davis is injured. So at the moment, he's pretty much got Alan and Andre Gomez, and he needed players in there. I get what you're saying about the dogs of war, but also Everton have aspirations of being something different.
Not this season.
No, and that's unfortunate. That's the way it's worked out. I've said it before. I think they made such a big mistake by hiring Rafa Benitez. It just put everyone at the club, whether they'd admit it or not, on an absolute downer, that they brought this guy into the club who used to manage Liverpool. So even as good as it could have got under Rafa Benitez, obviously looking at him thinking, I remember you. And again, look, I've said this before, people say it doesn't matter, but for Everton fans, I think it did matter. And I think they're probably feeling a lot better about things now than they were maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago, because Benitez is gone and there's some fresh faces in there, and with that it brings hope.
Do you think Dele Alli can have an impact?
Well, he's spoken very well about his admiration for Frank Lampard when he grew up watching Frank Lampard, and there is similarities in the qualities Dele Alli possesses and displayed when he was at his best, where he could drift into positions and score goals. And you think, one of his best goals actually came at Goodison Park, where he took a ball on the chest and put it away. That's when Dele Alli was at his best. He's 25. Yeah, he said, it goes back to what I said a few minutes ago about the Irish players. Dele Alli said, I just want to be happy playing football again. And Frank Lampard's hoping that he can be the man to get Dele Alli playing with a smile on his face and scoring goals. Donny van de Beek, he's an unknown quantity in the Premier League. He's only started 4 Premier League games for Manchester United, so we don't know if he can cut it in the Premier League. But as I said, Everton were in a position where they needed central midfielders, and these 2 players were available, so they've taken a punt on them. And look, we could be talking in 2 months' time saying it didn't really work out, did it? But only time will tell.
Yeah, except they've got Dele Alli on a 2.5-year contract because they had to do that deal permanently.
Yeah, but in fairness, they won't have to pay all that.
They'll have to pay his wages.
They have to pay his wages, and then the deal is set up that
it could be $7 million a year.
They could end up paying out big money, but that's only if he delivers. So but that wouldn't be a bad thing for Everton.
Yeah, look, in fairness, at that stage, if it's worked, it's worked. And the 40 million to get a player who could score 15 goals a season from midfield or as a forward, okay, whatever. I think that's fine. But it's such a big punt. It's such a big punt for Lampard.
Yeah.
It's another character in the dressing room who has big question marks over him. And you look around that dressing room and you look at the decisions that they've made in the past, and it's like, I don't know. I'm not sure that's either him or Van de Beek would have been the ones that I would have been going to looking for support as it gets to squeaky bum time, because everybody else around there has strengthened as well. Newcastle, Trippier, Wood, Byrne, Bruno Guimaraes and Matt Targett on loan. I said earlier, I think this is a good solid 6.5, 7 out of 10. No crazy swing for the fences with any of those signings, particularly strengthening your defence, your centre midfield. You've got a backup striker, another striker rather. Now, I thought it wasn't a bad transfer window. They didn't get fleeced. There was no ridiculous signings made.
No, I think the standard signing there is Guimarães from Lyon, Brazilian midfielder, and I think Newcastle fans are going to love him. Now, looking at, you mentioned Everton there, I'm kind of looking at the table. I'm thinking from Southampton down, any one of those could go. The interesting thing about, at the start of the season I went Norwich, Watford, Burnley. Norwich have won back-to-back games, so I'm thinking, gee, maybe Dean Smith could actually turn this around. Burnley obviously got rid of, Chris Wood was sold to Newcastle. I thought that is a big blow. But now they've replaced him with Weghorst, who could actually be a better version of Chris Wood. He's obviously, he's a bit taller, but he's perfect for Sean Dyche.
At full 3 inches.
Yeah, and he's probably more mobile as well. It's one of those that he could hit the ground running, and that's exactly what Burnley need. They have a load of games in hand. And Dyche has proven before that he can get them out of trouble. Then I look at Watford and I thought, yeah, they're doomed. But then they've brought in Roy Hodgson, who will probably steady the ship as well. And I think with Newcastle, they only have to finish 17th. I think those signings should be enough to get them out of trouble. So then if you're the likes of Everton, Brentford, Crystal Palace, Southampton, you're looking over your shoulder. Brentford have brought in Christian Eriksen. That could be a masterstroke. So
it's game on. Last one then. Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang managed to engineer a transfer to Barcelona. Stunning coup from his perspective. Is it good business for either Arsenal or Barcelona? Arsenal getting credit for taking the wages off the books. It's like, didn't they spend a lot of money to buy him? Wasn't he quite expensive? And now they got nothing for him.
Cut your losses. Yeah. I think there is enough evidence, and there should have been possibly enough evidence before I signed him, that maybe around the dressing room he wasn't the best influence ever. He made up with that with outrageous footballing ability for a couple of seasons, and that was definitely worth it for a period of time, but it's not anymore.
It's a very Arsenal thing to have happened, although at least they're now not playing him and also paying him.
They've learned from the Ozil situation where
kind of.
He's, well, in terms of how they've just cut ties a lot quicker.
Yeah.
And they've, he was getting 350 grand. I think the next down is Thomas Partey on 200 grand a week. So straight away, the
ceiling is lowered drastically.
Ceiling is lower, but also a problem that Arteta has is he's got to clear out players that just are not good for the club. And I'm looking at Granit Xhaka, and look, he'll come back into the team and he'll have games where, but then he'll let them down again. He could have 10 decent games and then he'll turn up in a big game and he'll get sent off, and we're just left in the same situation. So even look at Arsenal's North London rivals, Tottenham. Conte obviously brought in a couple of players in Bentancur and Kulusevski. Bentancur looks like that could be a really good signing. Kulusevski's somebody he wanted in Inter Milan, but also it's interesting who he offloaded. He wanted players like Ndombele gone, Lo Celso gone.
Yeah.
Brian Hill is a bit strange one. He didn't sign him,
and he's only 20. Maybe he goes out on loan and comes back.
Yeah.
Look, we'll come back to Spurs transfer window because they did do a fair bit of business, and it's going to be much more Antonio Conte squad from this point forward, and I think that's the sign that he's going to stay and see this through now, as opposed to disappearing the two UA players or his prototype players. There is some breaking GAA news in the last 10 minutes or so. In a statement on the Tipperary GAA website, Tipperary's 3-time All-Ireland winning defender Padraig Maher has revealed he is retiring because of a neck injury. It's not the end I would have wished for, but the time has come for me to announce my retirement from hurling. Unfortunately, I recently received medical advice regarding a neck injury and I've been advised to step away from contact sport. It's heartbreaking to have to make the decision, but it's the most important one for me and my health moving forward. So it is devastating, I'm sure, that he won't even get to go back and hurl with the club. Representing Tipperary has been my lifelong dream, and I'm truly honoured and privileged to have played for Tip for 13 seasons. I've made some truly great friends and met some great people. I've made memories that will stick with me for the rest of my days. While I wish this could have lasted a bit longer, I'm glad that I can look back and know that I gave everything I had for the blue and gold jersey. And he goes on to thank the GPA, Thurles Sarsfields, and I'll never be too far away from the outside field, his school and Thurles Oak and the Gardaí. I didn't realise he was a guard as well, and he talks about his parents as well. So obviously heartbroken. Padraig Maher retiring at 33, it didn't feel like he was done as a hurler at all. It really felt like if Tipperary were going to get back to challenging Limerick that he was going to be a very important player for them, and like one of the best defenders of his generation. And I think when it comes to talk about the Tipperary greats as we go on, we're going to realise just how important a player he was. Burst on the scene when they stopped the 5 in a row. He was part of that under-21, that group of 5 lads who were under-21s and won the All-Ireland and then won the under-21 All-Ireland in the same week. And, you know, I think delivered on his promise as one of the best defenders of his generation, and just a teak tough, like that cliche of being teak tough. It's like, picture him in the dictionary beside, when you're talking about this, it's like him and, I don't know, Darren Fay, maybe. They would be the ones you'd reach for. And he also, the greatest accolade in his career was actually showing up to studio for the morning after the All-Star panel, which is a notoriously tough morning to show up for. He got the call and he answered the call, and he showed up after going to the All-Stars the night before. So that's teak tough right there. Were you hosting that day? No, I was producing that day. I mean, it's like a huge kind of like shift from Tipperary now. Like Brendan Maher obviously retired as well last year, so it's going to be a year without both of them this year, obviously, and for the foreseeable future. And I guess the other element from this, granted it's a very specific injury that he's had to retire from, is a theme around the age profile of people that are calling it a day in hurling. I guess when you're talking about Padraig Maher and you think about Brendan Maher and you think about, say, Joe Canning, who retired last year obviously as well, they all came along as young hurlers, and maybe that's just a toll of it over a period of time. But in your early 30s, it looks like time is up for a lot of these players, and it's a young man's game at this point. An absolute legend, Padraig Maher. Really, really sad to hear this, because it did feel like there was going to be a couple of seasons where that new group of players were coming through, and maybe Bonner was going to be able to integrate them. But unfortunately, in Padraig Maher's situation, that is not the case. We wish him the very best on his retirement, and it is a brilliant, truly brilliant career that he has put down. So he owes nobody nothing at this stage. Right, that's this week's Deal or No Deal.
I signed for them after the Euros, and after my first day's training, I was driving home. I was actually thinking, regretting it, what have I done? Like I walked into a circus. It's amazing, isn't it?
I wonder, does Frank Lampard feel a little bit like he's walked into a circus when he's like, oh yeah, I really wanted Van de Beek and Dele Alli. That's exactly what I needed. 9:41 this morning. We've gone a little bit over because of the breaking news about Padraig Maher. Their OTB AM is brought to you by Gillette. Good morning. Start with Gillette. Put your best face forward with their new and improved razors. Final comment for now. Team 14 beat Team 27. That's Westmeath beating Wicklow, and they get a jump in the power rankings. Your legs are gone, Sheahan, says John. Your legs are gone. Gone for a long time. OTB Sports Radio today has great stuff. Nigel Mansell, Dadcast, a career retrospective from Stephen Sleeves Elliott, Jason Sherlock on OTB Gold, and the show will be live tonight. Tomorrow morning we'll be joined by Aisling O'Reilly, Graham Garrity and much more. Owen is out of here for a little while. We might not see or hear from him ever again. I'll chat to you again on Thursday morning with hopefully a lot of good stuff in the bag. Right now, Billy Joe Padden analysing the weekend's GAA. Enjoy.
You're very welcome back. So we'll be talking rugby after 8 o'clock. In the meantime, though, we're going to talk about the game at Croke Park on Saturday night, which certainly got the Allianz Football League up and running in a big way. Dublin 113, Armagh 215 in front of 22,000. And Billy Joe Padden is with us. Evening, Billy Joe.
Good evening, Joe.
So get ready to read way too much into the first weekend of January. Here we go.
Yeah, I'm worried about Dublin getting relegated and there'll be new Leinster champions. I think that it was a great game of football to start out, and exactly the way you'd want the league campaign to start for everyone bar Dublin supporters. I think it gives probably everyone a bit of encouragement to see the way Armagh were able to play in Croke Park. And I think it means that we may be looking ahead to the most unknown championship we've seen in many, many years.
Yeah, which is a welcome thing, isn't it? It's amazing across all sports how quickly and how ruthless opposition are when it comes to the aura of the great team or the dominant team, because it's very quickly that Dublin aura has been chipped away. And I would think for opposition players, the thoughts and feelings they have now going into a Dublin match as opposed to 18 months ago are completely different.
Yeah, not just 18 months ago. If you take it, Mayo going to the All-Ireland semi-final last year against Dublin, like myself included, didn't think it was possible that Mayo would win that game. And Armagh have just added another seed of uncertainty there. And I think it works both ways. It gives encouragement, obviously, to the likes of Armagh or any county that's going to go and play Dublin and Croke Park over the coming weeks, or even have a home game against Dublin. But as well, it affects Dublin also. And Dublin know themselves they are not as confident as they were. They are not as sure as what they were in everything that they do. So it has an effect on both ways.
There's a danger here. We'll just talk Dublin. So let's give Armagh their due credit first. You would know the Armagh scene very well. Kieran McGeeney has been given time to build something slowly, and he's an inspirational figure. He's brought in Kieran Donaghy of late, and they look to be in exceptional shape. So what's happening in Armagh football over the last couple of years that's resulted, I suppose, in this moment?
Well, patience. You mentioned is the first thing. They've shown patience with him. The results have not always been there. But I think what you saw the last day is that a very well prepared and conditioned team, and he's obviously looked through the county over the last number of years, picked out the players that he wants to work with. In those situations, it's never a case where you can buy a ready finished product of an inter-county player, and he has worked with them definitely on the physical side of things. When you look at that Armagh team, so big and powerful and fast, and look like they're built to play in Croke Park, and then you add that to the fact that some of the size they have, and then the footballing ability, whether it's Rian O'Neill, who's an obvious standout, or even Jarly O'Byrne's a great footballer as well in that middle third. Aidan Forker can play all over the field. Players that have been really, really, Kieran McGeeney has really worked with over the last 5 or 6 years, and he's starting to reap the benefits now, and they're gaining confidence more and more times. I think that it's obvious that over the last couple of years they've had lots of attacking talent. They've been involved in big games where they've scored big scores, but maybe let in big scores as well. Whereas I think the big encouragement for me and for many other people that look at Armagh closely will be how well they defended Dublin for the vast majority of that game the last day.
Well, let's hone in on that point then as a way to segue into Dublin. So how did Armagh defend Dublin? Because it's so rare that you see one... Well, I say so rare, but certainly going back more than a year, certainly. But it's rare to see one Dublin not looking very assured and in control of the situation when they have possession in the opposition half. It felt like, you think of the All-Ireland final, Tyrone, where they went deep, 12 men behind the ball, 13 men, but Dublin were in total control of the situation. For the first time that I can really think of, Dublin were not in control, even though they were in possession. And the other thing which jumped out is they were taking shots from 25 metres, 30 metres, and not even, running out of ideas. Like in the first minute, Bugler had 2 wides in the first 10 minutes from distance. Howard's first point for them was from distance, and that was right from the off. So I couldn't work out if that was Armagh stopping them making inroads, or if that was a new policy of Dublin, or maybe it's just a slippage in trying to work very scoreable chances for Dublin. But that was very striking. But you might start by what Armagh were doing to stop Dublin look as assured as they often do in the opposition half.
Well, if you take Armagh, as I said, the strength of their team is around the middle, and the attacking players they have, even attacking players coming off the bench, they really probably only have, Paddy Burns is probably the most comfortable man marker they had on the field the last day. So they are short in that area of the field. Aidan Forker can play all over the field. Played fullback. He's an excellent footballer. I think the key thing what Armagh did is they dropped back and protected the D really, really well. They let Dublin have shots from outside the 45. They let Dublin have shots from the corner. They were very disciplined in that. They got back into a defensive shell, and then they tackled really aggressively, but with discipline in those areas, not to give away too many frees. And that really protected them. I think in many ways, Dublin they ran out of ideas. They didn't show the patience they would normally have done in other years of continuing to move a team left to right, probing, then finding the man in space on the front of the D to take the right shot. Their shot selection was way off compared to what it had been under Jim Gavin, and that's something that they'll no doubt try and address over the next coming weeks. But what that did was it set up a platform for Armagh, that they were solid, that they weren't conceding scores. And then the next step of that is that they're such a good counter-attacking team because they have those good attacking players, and they have really, really good foot passers to play on that counter-attack. It wasn't a running-based counter-attack. It was a long foot pass counter-attack. You look at someone like Aidan Forker on the full forward line, great left boot and play a pass. If you can get the ball to Rory Grugan, brilliant kick passer. He'll play the right ball in to the edge of the square, or Rian O'Neill, or whoever's in there. And that's very much the way Kieran McGeeney wants them to play. Croke Park is the ideal place to play like that because you have the spaces to play into. So it was very unusual, as you rightly point out, Joe, that Dublin, for maybe the first time we've ever seen, let another team dictate the terms of engagement. And that was the case right the way through the 70 minutes the last day.
Because to extend the Tyrone comparison, for instance, Armagh on Saturday night are not the first team who said, let's get men behind the ball and try and defend the D. It's just that it worked so spectacularly against Dublin. And they were shooting from distance, as we mentioned, on a couple of occasions. Costello seemed like a loss. He was the only one that seemed to be making inroads, from the D and inside, whereas everybody else seemed to get swallowed up. There was a really emphatic turnover on 33 minutes where Fenton went in and got swallowed up and had to turn around, and he kicked the ball back along the ground, falling over under pressure, and then Small took it in and he was turned over, and there were 3-4 Armagh players around Small. So, why that worked so successfully is it must be on Dublin as well as Armagh here, because they are not the first team to try this. And the other thing, we didn't see that pattern, Billy Joe, of how many Dublin scores have we seen where someone comes around the corner and pops it over in space. Why? Like, that seemed to be negated completely. It's like that old trick is gone almost.
Yeah, but I think it's personnel as well, right, Joe. Like, if you look at Costello is comfortable in those situations. He can go off both feet. He works well in tight areas as well as he does in open space, and he's got a quickness to get the shots away. Whereas without Con O'Callaghan, without Dean Rock starting from the start, the other players have just not shown, Basquel and Byrne, have just not shown a level of comfort to operate at speed in those tight situations. The other players, like Scully and Kilkenny, are really experienced, excellent footballers, but they were doing more of their work out the field and weren't really as effective. Now, Scully was okay. Kilkenny can play much better. Maybe Dublin will look back at the game and say, well, you know what, we probably should have played Kilkenny inside with Costello, because Kilkenny has shown in the recent past that he can operate effectively as a full forward. But then you're missing something out on the edges as well. And you're right, you just don't have that ball movement, that patience, that circulation of the players in the attack and third, where they all, whether it be 8-9 Dublin players, seem to be constantly moving in that area, constantly moving the ball, and then inevitably you create that chance maybe for a Fenton coming in at the end of something, and then when they did get those opportunities, uncharacteristically, Fenton dropped one short that he would normally have scored. So it's a bunch of those things went wrong for Dublin on that night. It wasn't just any one thing.
Yeah, well, that's all very interesting, actually. And so say the Fenton example where he dropped one short, and I think around that period of time as well, he turned down the opportunity to shoot. So Fenton, a hallmark of his play over the last number of years, and don't get me wrong, Fenton is and remains one of the great players, but this is an interesting situation. Fenton dropping that ball short is something we never see. He scored so many points where he runs up, seemingly no one can get near him, and he just pops it over, and he makes it look so easy. So it's eye-catching when he drops it short. One of the reasons that this is such an interesting situation now is that after the Mayo defeat, I think a lot of us anticipated a backlash from Dublin, that they would get the head down, get fit as hell, be angry, be hurt, and in the off-season have conversations about the slippages in discipline and shot selection and the minutiae which made them so great for so long, and would rectify all that immediately. And yet, if anything, those things were exacerbated by moments like Fenton dropping a ball short. So that's why, again, caveat that this is January, but it feels like this is a continuation of a slippage, and they had the circuit breaker of winter to put things right, and they haven't, and that's why this feels like this is a pattern, and this is going to continue as opposed to a one-off season last year.
It must be worrying for Dublin supporters. I as well thought that Dublin would react really, really strongly, and we have to add that on a first night in the National League, anything can really happen. You can prepare well, and then things just don't work out. We've never seen it from Dublin before. They've always been so well organised. Even nights they haven't been playing at their best, somebody they've inevitably done enough of the right things to win the game. I think that when you look as well at the retirements, and the message that it's not all on Desi Farrell or his coaching team, the message that has been, constantly delivered through that team over years and years, whether it's be from McMenamin or Philly McMahon or players like that, Maybe now it's a bit more difficult for Kilkenny and Fenton because they have to lead in every way, not just lead by example. They probably have to be driving forward in terms of their communication on the dressing room. And they're great players, and I fully expect them to get back to their best this summer. Sometimes you're just a bit out of form. And Fenton, over the last couple of times he's played for Dublin, from having this amazing record of never ever losing and always playing well, that he's not in his best form at the minute. I fully expect him to recover. I think that shot selection will improve. But the other thing, will they be able to be as decisive and as effective in the full forward line without the players they're missing? You know, if Con O'Callaghan doesn't come back in maybe better form than he finished last season on, well, then there probably are other teams out there that are much stronger in that area of the field. Armagh included, Kerry included, even Tyrone, when you consider the players they have in the full forward line. And we mightn't have said that about any area of the Dublin team over the last number of years.
On the shot selection on the wides, so they had 13 wides. Here's Desi Farrell speaking to Dubs TV afterwards about that issue.
Yeah, disappointed not the start we would have wanted, but look, that's where we're at, and we just need to face facts, and we didn't perform like we would have expected to perform tonight. Notwithstanding that, it was quite noticeable that Armagh had a lot of work done, very, very fit, very well conditioned, well organised. So we were struggling at times there to be competitive, particularly in the first half, but we got to grips with it a little in the second half, but ultimately our shooting efficiency was disappointing, and that's definitely a key takeaway for us from tonight.
So, look, again, we're overreacting in the most self-aware sense imaginable here. Tralee is going to be very telling.
It is because the National League, you just have to get points from your first two games. You want to make it as easy as you possibly can. The key objective for any of the teams, and this is Dublin included or Kerry, is that you stay in that division. That's the priority for everyone. When you're getting into the later stages, you think about winning it. Going down there, particularly with Kerry coming off a draw, and it's always, when Dublin have been really, really strong, it's been a close game and a difficult game. Yeah. You think that the way Armagh maybe offered some sort of a blueprint for Kerry, when you consider the strengths they have in the full forward line, Kerry can they play some of that direct football that maybe will put pressure on the Dublin full back line, put pressure on Comerford on some of those balls into the square, and will that be a way that Kerry will try and attack Dublin? Whereas I think from Dublin's point of view, they've got to get that physicality, that foothold back in the middle of the field, show the athleticism that they have, show that ball retention and possession-based game that's been better than we've ever seen from any team. And they really work on circulating the ball in the attack and third to find the right shooting chance and not to force it in any way. And if that's what they'll need to do down there, but it's going to be very, very difficult because Kerry are going to be very, very motivated to really lay down a marker at an early stage, considering that we all think that Dublin are not as good as they were.
And do you see? So you raised a point there which I did want to get your thoughts on, because you're always a very astute observer of tactics and the trends in the game. I've heard different people suggest that the days of Dublin possession as we knew it, back and forth across the pitch, that's not in vogue anymore, and that's going out of fashion, and we're going to see lots of teams play more direct football, almost akin to what Armagh did. So do you think that's where we're going, or do you still envisage Dublin hogging possession in opposition halves and working scores over 2, 3, 4 minutes of back and forth?
Well, it all depends on what your opposition is going to do. I still maintain if you find yourself in the situation Dublin did in the first half the last day, where Armagh were dropping large numbers behind the ball, I don't think there's any way you can play direct there when there's that many bodies back. You have to use the possession-based game to create the openings. You obviously, the best way to counter-attack is through that long kick pass based counter-attack. It gets the ball down the other end of the field in the quickest fashion. And each team trains for that sort of counter-attack. And if you find a situation where you have a lot of your opposition players pushed up on you and you can get in behind them and play those quick passes, well then you will be direct, and that's the right coaching approach in that situation. But the way, there's no one's going to throw out the playbook in terms of your defensive strategy in getting bodies back. So if you're playing a team that gets bodies back, and I fully expect Kerry to get lots of bodies back, and you can't make those inroads in the first two quick passes, well then you can't risk turning it over when you're in a vulnerable situation yourself. And that's what Dublin did on some of those turnovers, handed the ball straight back to Armagh, and Armagh rightly punished them. So I still think that the possession-based game will be vitally important in situations where you're facing a deep-lying, congested defence, whereas the approach on a counter-attack will be to move the ball by the foot as quickly as you possibly can and as long as you can, albeit keeping in safe possession, bouncing it in front of an attacker as opposed to creating 50-50 contests.
Okay, it's going to be an interesting few weeks. I know, just before we go, the other game that you did see was at Markievicz Park, the draw between Mayo and Donegal. Any big takeaways from that one, Billy Joe?
I think the biggest takeaway out of all that would be the Donegal. Donegal would be really disappointed that they weren't able to see that out. Total control of the game, numerical advantage for the last 20 minutes with Stephen Cohen getting sent off. And really through their own game management, they handed Mayo opportunities. Look, Mayo played much better in the second half. Aidan O'Shea came on, they did well. Great to see Jason Doherty come back. Absolutely remarkable the way he was able to play after 2 serious knee injuries and 2 years out. He led by example, got a couple of scores, maybe could have had a goal himself. And as a result, Ryan O'Donoghue and Tommy Conroy both started to get into the game in the second half in the latter stages. Whereas Mayo's standout player throughout was Robbie Hindley. Saved Mayo in the first half. It could have been a hammering really early on without Robbie Hindley making saves and contesting high balls. And then he was the man that got a point for them with an excellent free towards the end. So, Mayo come away with a point, having only really played for 15 minutes, and that 15 minutes with only 14 men. And Donegal will be kicking themselves in terms of experienced players not using the ball well when they had the advantage, with the conditions, with the extra man, not playing the game in Mayo's half, and trying to keep possession and not being able to do it. Just really, really bad decision making.
Yeah. So to conclude, and you're allowed to change your answer over the next couple of weeks, no problem. For the first time in a very long time, there's no standout favourite to win the All-Ireland.
I would agree completely with that. Yeah, I still think that Dublin are obviously, I think they're my favourites for it, I suppose. I think that they still can put out the best 15 there if they get everyone back fit. You get Conor Callahan back into that, McCarthy back into that, you get Fenton going again. Yeah. That's a serious team to try and operate against, particularly in Croke Park and the open spaces. But you're right, when you look at the rest of Division 1 teams, even if a Galway down in Division 2, they'll all think there's a big opportunity there to do something special this summer.
Okay, brilliant stuff. Billy Joe Padden, thanks a mil.
No problem, Joe.
OTB AM.
With Gillette, put your best face forward with our new and improved razor.